Okay, so let's get started here. So first of all, can everyone hear me? I'm pretty sure this should be working, but always good to make sure. Um, but yeah, once this is fine, I can get my list open where I have all my screenshots and stuff like that. Okay, it seems like everyone can hear me, so I'll switch to this. Hello, everyone. So this is going to be a very similar format to the way I did the teaser trailer thing, where I have a document here with a lot of screenshots. I think I have like 80 something screenshots. It was a good while getting screenshots from the trailer, just so I had a bit of everything. Just because with copyright how it is and stuff like that, I don't want to mess around with the parts of the video getting claimed and stuff like that and having to like do all that stuff. So we'll be going off screenshots here. I assume everyone has seen the trailer many times already, so we're familiar with what we're doing here, and we can go straight into the breakdown. So I suppose first of all, what do people think of the trailer? That has to, I suppose, be where we start off here. Just general thoughts on it. We were waiting for this for quite a while. It finally dropped after a little bit of a weird setup, but we got there. We got there after everything. It was certainly a unusual way that this all kind of happened. I don't know if everyone saw this, but I'll just bring this open. My Twitter here. So how many people were watching the countdown thing that they did beforehand? I thought this was interesting, but very weird, the way that they did this countdown thing in the hour beforehand, where it was this interactive, kind of interactive thing where I'm not really sure exactly how interactive it was, but it was very slow. It was cool, but it took a really long time to get there, to the point where, like, right at the end, I'm kind of like, the trailer's just about to start and you haven't ended yet. And then they kind of ended it really suddenly. But yeah, we got a few posters. It was weird the way that they did it, because like they're like, you unlocked a poster. It's the Air Nomad poster. And literally it's this tiny image of it that already on YouTube they did it in the kind of like phone style kind of, and then it was just a what was it, a widescreen picture on a on a phone kind of portrait. So it was just a weird way to do all of this stuff. And like, yeah, we got a bunch of pictures. We did get the title theme, which was kind of interesting. The map, I suppose live action map of the world was kind of interesting. If anyone missed that we got this, not that it's particularly like different or anything like that. So yeah, other than that, yeah, we got some other screenshots. Like, in case you hadn't seen this one, we did get this screenshot as well as this one, but I think they gave this one to us again. I'm assuming they'll post some of this stuff up on like the social medias as we go forward, but it was certainly a weird thing. It was cool, certainly, but not super interesting. But yeah, it seems most people were pretty impressed with the trailer, and I liked it too. My thing was just that, like, I didn't find myself at the end of the trailer like hyped beyond belief. I definitely had a little bit of like, oh, like, yeah, as expected, like, the live action adaptation is only going to interest me so much that it's cool and all, and I'm almost like, I'm more excited about the excitement than I am about the kind of content itself necessarily. But because of that, in a way, like, I am interested to discuss it and kind of see what everyone kind of thinks as we go through it. I just really got the impression coming out of this at the end of like, yeah, it's really going to, I think, take me just seeing the episodes to really just get that sense for, you know, what it fully is like. There's only so much about what's going on here. let's see. So, if you put captions on the cast breakdown video, it says the narration is by Uncle Iroh. Okay, so this is actually from Iroh. Because I was wondering this the whole time through. Is like, is this Gyatso like the teaser trailer, or is it Iroh? Is it Roku? Well, like, Wait, is this correct? I'm not actually sure. I'm actually a little bit confused here about this. Like, this is probably the first thing, just with regards to the dialogue. For the main bits of narration here, and then he also it said something like this. Whose is that? Like, in book 1, when does Iroh speak to Aang to say this to him? That's what I'm not sure about, which is why, like, again, I'm kind of like, I'll just add it back in. Roku, like, I the whole time too, I was convinced it was Gyatso, but I'm also kind of like, it makes sense in the context of, like, the Air Nomads knew something was sort of coming, and that's the whole reason that Aang knew at a younger age that he was the Avatar, because they told him ahead of an oncoming storm, basically. It could be Roku, but again, they never really showcased Roku, so it's a kind of weird one if, like, the debut effectively in the live action thing of Roku is through, like, background dialogue that they didn't even make, like, inherently clear. But yeah, it could be Boomy as well, actually. A few people saying it's Roku for sure, but I'm not sure. It's a confusing point, I think, is the kind of main thing. So that was all kind of fine. Otherwise, like, I like that we did actually get to hear bits of dialogue from, like, Katara saying the Foundation's destroyed everything in their path. It's going to need Aang. Sokka said some stuff. Zuko said some stuff. It was all very perfectly in character lines and stuff like that. You know, Aang was like, I'm not someone who can stop the Fire Nation. I don't want the responsibility. So we got, like, an emotional Aang from a line from Aang, highlighting the character arc. I did appreciate that we got the emotion out of Aang through kind of seeing this, of, like, this is the reluctant Avatar story. Sokka, you know, the group kind of forming together was actually pretty nice. So yeah, that's an interesting one. So Iroh is apparently the one doing this. I'll just put the whole thing in because it's not super clear. But again, this is where the adaptation comes into play, where we don't know. There could be extra scenes where Iroh does get to interact with the gang a lot more. It's certainly a possibility. But I'm not overly sure, obviously. So yeah, that's all fine, and we end with the kind of big moment there. Perfect. So we'll get into the screenshots here. So these are all, as far as I'm aware, in order. So I actually love the opening shot. I think the Fire Navy ship looks very cool, coming through the Water Tribe kind of waters here. I do think it looks really good. There is definitely, like, in general, maybe with some of the kind of CG background work, where, like, it definitely has that sort of, like, a lot of this was filmed in the volume kind of effect that some of the, like, Star Wars shows that were done in the volume kind of have. I don't think it's, like, bad or anything like that. It's just you can tell it is CG, and it's not maybe, like, seamlessly maybe integrated in maybe the perfect way we'd want, but, like, I don't really have too much of a problem. I think it looks really good. Then we get an interesting shot of Appa over the forest here. This is obviously kind of in or around Senlin village. It's the Heibai forest, I'm assuming, because it's burned, as you can see here. And given that we do get to see Heibai in this trailer, I definitely think it makes sense. And then what is interesting about this is that, like, yeah, this either the timing of this one, I guess, either has to be one of our few looks at maybe the kind of finale, the attack on the north. Otherwise, there's maybe the chance this is part of maybe a Sozin's Comet thing, just a quick montage thing highlighting that the Fire Nation did attack the rest of the world, but it's probably just from the a glimpse into the ending that like the Fire Nation are attacking places, and this is like the big event we build up to in book 1. But then we get, this is a very interesting one. So straight away, who is this? I'm pretty sure this has to be Sozin. I've seen some people be like, it's Roku, it's just a fire sage, but I'm kind of like, it's Sozin, isn't it? I know, again, I'll admit, I'm not super familiar with a lot of the actors, so I wouldn't know them just by sight, but I'm pretty sure just based on what they do here, because I'm pretty sure as you go through this, comes in covered in fire, he then kind of gets the kind of veil of fire off him, and he firebends at an air nomad. So it's obviously during the air nomad attack on the Southern Air Temple, which is the temple we specifically know we're going to see. So I'm guessing this is Gyatso that we see here, but again, you don't really get a super clear look here overall. But I'm pretty sure that is the intent of what they're going for. I think everyone realistically, when they saw that they had an actor for Sozin and that Gyatso was cast and that they were going to do more, I think everyone got the sense that like, oh, well, surely they're going to have him lead the attack. So that's a very interesting one there for sure. The attack here, I think, looks pretty okay. It's hard to tell if like the airbending going on here and so on. Especially because we saw this on the website yesterday, and there's a little bit of a like, is the glow in his eyes, like, is it just the fire kind of reflecting off his eyes, and what exactly is going on here? But still, an interesting look, and yeah, I think it has to be Sozin. It's just such regal kind of fancy armor. We don't see Roku like wear kind of this sort of stuff. We don't see the Fire Sages wear this sort of stuff. It's Sozin, I'm pretty sure. But I like that they're kind of showing that. You can see some bodies on the ground here. So obviously, I guess Gyatso here has taken out some firebenders along the way, and it would make sense that something like this has to happen. The Enoma genocide has always been a thing where, in the animation kind of continuity, we want to know the details of what happened there. Like, it seems like did Sozin directly do it himself is perhaps not maybe the case in like proper canon, but that's what they're doing here to make it more impactful. Will Aang like learn that specifically, potentially, like it was a previous Fire Lord who killed his father figure? That's a bit of an interesting one. I'm not really sure where exactly that would come up, but it's an interesting one for sure. But then we jump into the kind of present day story as we obviously get. But let's see in the chat there. Cash says, would this imply Sozin somehow knew the Avatar would be born at the Southern Temple, or was it a lucky guess? Yeah, this is an interesting one where it's like, I'm guessing it to some degree. Like, they obviously told Aang early. Amongst the air nomads, I guess they knew. It could have got out that they were doing that, because obviously it's a little bit like, well, does he just attack each of the temples personally, and it just happens that like by the time he got here, Aang had left, or did he specifically know that Aang, the Avatar, is at the Southern Temple? I'd like to know how they specifically get across that, but I guess we might just have to accept that, like, he attacked the Southern Temple. That's what he did. So there. But anyway, we'll start here. So we get the boy in the iceberg moment here, but unlike in the teaser trailer, they actually kind of show us it kind of erupting, where you can see here you get the beam of light as it comes out of the ground, and you get the reaction from Katara and also Sokka to the beam of light, and then we get the glowing kind of silhouette here. I think it looks pretty cool. It's obviously a little bit like darker than like they do in the animation, but this is just, I suppose, like just the way it sort of has to be done, because they probably can't exactly maybe get the color effect that the animation does, and there's just always going to be things like that. But I think this looks pretty good overall, as like the classic kind of intro scene for sure. So I don't think there's too much else to really say here other than like it looks good. Will they do the whole either here or Avatar State moment at the Southern Air Temple? Will they do the kind of sages finding out that the Avatar has returned moment? Because I think we're for sure going to get a moment where like Ozai is informed the Avatar is back, and how exactly that takes place is going to be a pretty interesting one. Because I feel the Ozai scene from the teaser might be the moment he's told that the Avatar is back, but we have to wait and see. So yeah, that's that. We get a cool shot of the Fire Nation capital, I guess, since we immediately jump in. So this, I guess, is Harry Bulkan. It'll be interesting to see in the actual show itself, will they put the names up like that? I'm guessing they probably will, because I think it's one of the few times where we've actually got confirmation that Avatar Studios has like assisted, I think, on this to a certain degree. I think we roughly know that, like, at the very least with place names and being accurate about that, there's at least some relationship between this and Avatar Studios. Because like Agna Kel and location names like that, they are going to use, I believe, here. So yeah, we get that. We have Ozai, I suppose, holding court here with some of his kind of generals and high-ups, and I guess this is either a minister. We know at least one actor playing a fire sage. I'm not sure if that's what's going on here, or if this is just meant to be a political official, like this is one of the main people from like one of the noble clans or something like that. But still, cool moment as kind of Ozai turns to greet someone who's arrived inside. I wonder, like, is this part of maybe flashback, or is this present day stuff? That's an interesting one to kind of see. So yeah, see in the chat here. Yeah, some talk about Afiko here. That would be interesting if they ever did fully address the whole situation with Afiko, of like, are they ever going to fully say, no, this doesn't mean anything, or commit to it being canon? Because the trading card information is super interesting from the older TCG. Antoine Bandelay in chat here. Trailer was great. That's all. Just hopping in, editing my video now. Yeah, the trailer was good. It definitely succeeded. Like that's the big thing with the trailer, I would definitely say, is based on the reaction that I've seen. The trailer has succeeded in generating a lot of hype. They've done a really good job with the marketing over the last few days, announcing the trailer, releasing the website with the whole bending quiz that's actually kind of interesting. The countdown, while weird, did its job, and I think most people are pretty impressed with the trailer. So it's definitely a success. So there we go. So yeah, this is not the actor that we know is playing a sage or anything like that, but like you sort of wonder, like, is he a sage? Probably not. I don't think this really looks anything like a sage. Like I said, it's probably just some minister or noble. So we get that. Then we get the Azula shot here, and it's a bit of a weird one where it's like Azula with a bow and arrow, and then she fires it, and it's like, wait, what? What's going on here? Because they cut immediately from this to an explosion happens, and it's like, wait, did Azula cause that? Like, is Azula in the Omashu sequence, or are they just unrelated shots? Really unclear exactly in my mind what exactly is happening here, because it feels like, wait, have they replaced the Yuyan archers with like just Azula? Are they going with the idea that Azula is so perfect, she's good at everything, that she is actually a really accomplished archer, she can do all of this other stuff as well? Is that kind of part of how they're going to introduce her character as like the perfectionist about everything? I think that would be cool. I would just like to know, like, why is she firing a bow and arrow here? But still, nice inclusion here, because from the interviews that we got during the week, we do know that Azula is one of the points that they're highlighting as the changes that they're going to be making in the Book 1 adaptation. Is basically, okay, they're doing the Ernoma genocide scene at the start, Azula is going to be more used. That's like their secondary or like main point when it comes to this. Like Azula is in the main poster. So I'll just get that up now in a second, wherever it is. So we'll just scroll through this to find the main poster that they released a while ago. So yeah, the main poster, like Azula is here in this, despite of course having a very, very minimal role in the animation for book 1, but she's right there. Even Ozai being here is like, is it just because high profile actor, so they're going to include him in the trailer, but he's maybe not as in it as we expected him to be? Will be an interesting one. So yeah, Azula is cool. And then we get what's interesting here, a green explosion. So this, I think, is Omashu. I'm pretty sure this is Omashu, and there's some sort of an idea here about the explosion, I guess, exploding some of the green crystals, because you can see the green in the background, especially of like this shot happening here. And then I think this is meant to be is this Teo here up front? Because we see Teo, I think for sure, later in the trailer flying. So is this Teo here that they're talking to? Because they've definitely made the decision, and this is probably the biggest change that we see in the trailer. They're clearly putting the Northern Air Temple stuff into Omashu, which is a very, very interesting decision in my mind. Because we knew that this stuff was going to have to happen. We knew they were for sure going to have to blend a bunch of these episodes together. So because there's so many one-off episodes in book 1, if you want to include these characters, it's going to happen that way. So this is where like we have runs of episodes like, say, episode 9, Waterbending Scroll, Jet, The Great Divide. They're probably just going to skip The Great Divide, but you know, and that's the whole situation there. The Storm, the Blue Spirit, of course, they're going to do, but then like 14, 15, 16, 17, they're all kind of one-off episodes that kind of have a kind of specific focused character. So it'll be interesting to see like sort of what plots get the focus, and then when they decide that a character is just going to get inserted into a different plot, and then when they do the reverse as well. So I guess these being refugees in Omashu instead of an air temple, and highlighting that Omashu is one of the last sort of holdouts in the Earth Kingdom, is probably a good way to highlight the imprisoned arc, because I think we know they're probably not doing imprisoned, so we're probably not going to see Haru or Tyro. So the Omashu arc, I guess, will be our Earth Kingdom resistance arc, while also being the introduction to Boomy and potentially some of the who will train Aang at earthbending type stuff that will inevitably come up. So that's, I think, a reasonably clever way to do it. So they obviously didn't want to throw away the Mechanist and Teo, but they obviously realized we don't have time to do a half episode or a full episode going to the Northern Air Temple and having a full like battle sequence at the Northern Air Temple. How much they actually use with regards to any of the other temples will be interesting. Will we even see the Northern Air Temple, or will it just be like straightforward where we're going? But anyway, some sort of an explosion happens here. Again, the question with Azula is like, do we think Azula's plot is going to be like separate to everything, and then to match up with the animation, she'll be then brought into her plot as we know it, where, okay, Zuko messed up, he's a traitor now. Azula, you're in charge of this, having previously done all this stuff on your own. You're now going to, you know, have to do all this stuff as well. Hunt down your brother and your uncle, and also the Avatar as well. Because I'm guessing that's what they're doing with Azula, is that they're going to have her form her team in book 1 so that she's ready to go for book 2. It's just how much more they use her for will be a kind of will be an interesting one. I'm guessing they'll just have her maybe be the one leading the charge and taking over other Earth Kingdom places. So maybe we end with Azula attacking Omashu. And that's a big thing for, like, we have to the group has to leave. Like Boomy maybe is just like, I'll hold the line, you guys go, you need to go, the world needs you, I'll protect my city. And they go, and they assume he'll defend it, and you can still do Return to Omashu later because they leave without knowing the result of what happens. That could be an interesting way to do it, if indeed these shots are linked, that like Azula is in Omashu when she does all this stuff. So it would make sense because Omashu gets taken over like off screen. So I think this would make a little bit of sense ultimately. Because I think even Avatar Generations, when they did their Omashu update, had like a little bit of an extra bit that kind of was like, it had to have been the team being in Omashu like before we kind of knew it. But I don't know. Either way, that's that. Very cool shot here where we do get... I'm guessing this is the Zuko getting Iroh back from the Earth Kingdom soldiers. So he obviously burns down a tree to block their path. This starts the fight sequence. He eventually gets Iroh free. And that leads to the scene that we get. We see it in the first trailer and we see it in this trailer a little bit as well, where it's going to be the Zuko and Iroh fighting side by side against the Earth Kingdom soldiers. So seems like a pretty cool moment. Ostrich horse here. I think we have a clearer shot that we got on social media later. So I'll just show that here. Yeah, clearer shot of the ostrich horse, as you can see here. Looks cool. I think they've got the animal designs definitely right for from what I've seen so far, like Momo, Appa, ostrich horse here, the Shirshu, which we'll get to shortly, looks good. Even kind of as a spirit, of course, Heibai, I think also looks kind of interesting. Let's see. Yeah, questions about Zhong. I don't think there's an actor. I'm pretty certain there's been no mention of any actor for Zhong, and I think we would have known at this point. So there's that, and then we'll go back up here. We're still back towards the start. Yes. So there's all that, and then yeah, we get this. And then, of course, here's where we see the kind of confirmation of, like, Zuko's involved here. The tree is obviously just on the other side of the camera here. And this is him trying to get Iroh back. So we know where that's placed. We've seen quite a bit, I think, of this little sequence here. It seems to be one of the main ones they're highlighting for Zuko and also Iroh. Then we get a really cool shot here, I guess, of the group, their first steps basically in or around the air temple here. Cool shot highlighting that it's been abandoned, it's overgrown, there's no one here. But also it gives you a sense for like, okay, cool. Like it's got the pillars, you know, Patola mountain range stuff. You can tell it used to look incredible. But it obviously really hasn't been touched for the core of 100 years. So the background stuff in terms of like locations, I think looks fantastic. Pretty much consistently throughout the trailer. It definitely looks very good. We get this overhead shot. I think the significance of this mainly is that they have some of the dialogue play over this scene here about kind of, you know, coming together to help each other type stuff. So obviously this is after like the Water Tribe has been attacked here. It is a bit of a odd shot in that like I can't obviously kind of place like what exactly is going on here, and that like, is this Northern Water Tribe? Is it somewhere in the south? Like, is this like the aftermath or like a scene that happens in or around the very start? It is, I would say, oddly placed, kind of where this overhead shot takes place in the trailer. But still, kind of a interesting look. You can see the kind of soot all over the place. Obviously, firebenders have been here. So there's that. Then we get some shots. So here, we're back at the air temple, I believe, here. Or actually, are we? No, it might still be the air temple, I think, just judging by what's going on here. But either way, shot of Sokka and Katara. We get the kind of reverse shot where we do get to see Katara. And this is the build up to the first kind of, I suppose, joke in a way of the trailer of just like, hey, we're really confident in Aang, and then he immediately does the air scooter trick into the, I guess, cat owl statue here on Kyoshi. I guess this is part of the kind of showing off sequence here. So yeah, the air scooter I think looks pretty cool, and I'm glad they showed it to us because I still feel coming out of this that like I would like to see a more like all in a line bending shot rather than the heavy clips and stuff like that. But still, cool moment here. He comes around, he kind of swerves to take the corner, and then just face first. Like, there's the shot right there. His face is in contact with the stone. Made a bad mistake there, Aang. That's definitely like a fun shot. I like that. I like that there's humor here. I didn't think it was excessive, because that is a sort of worry, is that I don't think you can do the exact level of humor the animation has, but I think what we've seen so far in the trailer is a nice amount of like fun, humor, without going overly sort of like into the cartoony direction, which even the show itself, the animation itself, kind of moved away from after those earlier episodes a little bit. Still, of course, kept its humor quite a lot. But we moved away from some of the like snot jokes and stuff like that for the most part. So yeah, that's Aang wiping out there. Then we have some more Kyoshi Warrior stuff. Again, just watching this happen of like, I like the expression here from Katara where it's just like, she's so confident in Aang. Like, she's put so much hope in Aang. And here's just this moment where it's just like, yeah, I've been talking a lot about Aang, but yeah, he ran face first into that statue. You were right, Sokka. It's a fun scene, I think. You see some of the food behind here. And then, of course, Sokka just not really paying attention to everything that's going on, just focused on the eating. And I think that's in line as well. I like that little detail there of just, like, hey, he's eating while talking. Katara's the one who's, like, really bigging up Aang, whereas he's still maybe a little bit not fully convinced at this point. But still, cool stuff there. Then we get, I'm guessing this is Zuko's ship, since it seems to be on its own. And I think it's cool. Like, it has a very different look. You can tell they gave him a much lower class of ship compared to the stuff that we see right at the start here. Like, he doesn't have a creature on the front of his ship. So that's a fun little detail here. But we're jumping ahead a bit there. But yeah, we have this, and this gets us into like a Zuko specific kind of part of the trailer here, where we do see a little shot of Iroh, of course here. I think I didn't in this little document. If we saw it in the first trailer, I don't think I included it in this trailer. I think there's a shot here that's from the first trailer that we've seen already, but slightly better shot of the Fire Nation soldiers, highlighting their overall look with the mask and stuff like that. Then they kind of hit their staffs off the ground a little bit, and this is where we get the Zuko saying like, it's my destiny to hunt down Aang moment. So in terms of like, if you are not familiar with Avatar, they're at least presenting to you the sort of basic character elements here, even if they're not being super in detail. Of like, you do get Aang as the reluctant Avatar, young, but all the pressure is placed on him. You roughly get the idea of Zuko, okay, banished, has to find the Avatar to kind of get going again. You do get with Katara the idea of like, she places a lot of her hope in Aang, and is he ready for it as well? So the trailer does tell the stories correctly as well, so I do appreciate that as well. Then we get a bit of an action shot here. So we see Iroh doing some bending here. So just to roughly showcase this, there's an interesting one here where we see him sort of like, he kind of fans his hands around in front of him, and then kind of gets into the sort of like Dragon Ball sort of Kamehameha kind of scene here. And then that's basically what he does. And that's what this attack effectively is. Pretty powerful kind of fire attack here. As he does it, but yeah, you know, that's fine. Like I said, I wish we did have a little bit more, like, we get some quick cuts right at the end of the trailer, but I do wish we had seen more, like, here is 10 full seconds of just a bending sequence. I think we get enough of a sense I think we know it's going to be good. They know what not to do from the the movie. And they immediately have it. It just seems a lot more fluid here, and I think that's the right choice. So yeah, Iroh does that. Then we get a quick shot, and then they also include the stuff from the teaser trailer here as well. Directly, 100% for sure, showing us that yes, this is part of the flashback sequence where we find out about the whole Zuko spoke out of turn, him having to duel his father, and where he gets the scar from. So we're going to see that scene here, and it's pretty cool to see, definitely. So that's that. Then we do get the Aang kind of line, highlighting the reluctant Avatar stuff, which of course is the idea of him not wanting to have all of this responsibility, that he doesn't feel he can, on his own, take down the Fire Lord, and he does feel like it's all on him. And then the trailer, of course, sort of like answers that with the idea of he now has his sort of found family with the group, with the gang, Katara, Sokka, Appa's there as well, Momo, that whole thing. So they at least get that sort of emotion across, and it seems like the performance here has some emotion to it. Again, this is one where we have to see the moments leading up to this, probably the moments afterwards, but so far it looks like the actor they have for Aang is capable of doing the fun moments, action scenes, and the emotional moments also. And we get that here. They characterize Appa, so I hope we get a lot of this as the series kind of goes on. So we see him, Aang, hugging Appa here. Very nice moment. You get a look at the face here. Still wish we'd maybe got a bit of a closer up look at Appa's face with regards to the seeing his eyes. But it's a nice moment. It's like, okay, this gives me hope and confidence that they're going to, I guess, for Appa's lost days and that whole arc, it's going to hit home overall there. So let's see. New Albert Kim interview just dropped. The beginning dialogue is confirmed to be Gyatso. Okay, so I'll go back and I'll just lock that in, I guess. Which is what I thought in the first place. I guess there's some bad subtitles somewhere. So yeah, these generally kind of the broad topics, continuing on for the teaser trailer, the ones where it goes throughout the whole trailer: the world needs you, remember what you're fighting for, what the Fire Nation has done, why the world needs you. That seems to be now confirmed to be Gyatso for sure. So they're really emphasizing that, which I do like. I definitely appreciate that they're going ahead with that. So that's kind of nice. Let's see. Is the creature on the ship meant to be a line turtle? That is an interesting one. Yeah, what animal is this meant to be? Is this an attempt at a dragon? It doesn't seem, compared to what we know of Avatar dragons, it doesn't necessarily come across like that. Hard to tell. I'd be surprised if maybe the Fire Nation, especially in their kind of this era's kind of militaristic Fire Nation, chose to use a line turtle on their ships. So I'm guessing it probably is more meant to be a dragon, because that's what the Fire Nation is all about. But again, we have not seen what a dragon looks like in live action this show, so it's hard to say. But anyway, we will progress. So we were down here. We got through all of this. We got this. And then, yeah, this is where we get the moment of Sokka being like, hey, it's not all bad. You have me, you have Katara, you have Appa, of course, and we get a side look where you do get to see a little bit of his eyes. It's more of a kind of continuous shot where he flies across the kind of screen. And, of course, Momo does land on the head. So I'm guessing this is end of the Southern Air Temple. Momo has, based on the scene from the trailer, flown past them, landed. He's going to join them. And this is meant to be, I guess, one of those direct confirmation moments overall. So there's that. And then, yeah. The group all laugh, and I do like that they did this. I like that they had this moment of just kind of like the first trailer. They gave you one big kind of emotional moment of just the group having a fun moment overall. So yeah, Momo here, everyone laughs at this. This is a big fun moment for everyone. That was nice to see. Then we get the Shirshu. So this is Nyla, of course, June's Shirshu, which is very interesting to see. So of course the nose or the snout and the tongue are the most kind of important parts with the Shirshu, and it definitely stands out. I think it looks very, very good here, what we've seen of the Shirshu. And then, yeah, another look at June, which is clearly part of the screenshot that we got. And I believe we were also given a shot. Yeah, we do get a full shot later of, this was posted just online by Albert Kim, the showrunner. And we do get a full shot of Nyla as well. And June not sitting down. So, very cool stuff here. So obviously here's your confirmation. It is for sure the same as the show, I guess. Zuko and Iroh hire June to, I guess, track down Aang. It's just, I'm assuming this happens during Battle of the Water Tribe maybe isn't the case in this show, and it might just be a case of this is how we set up a secondary encounter. It might be a different episode, that whole thing here. So there's that. So, okay, it seems like IGN uploaded a trailer breakdown that, I guess, includes Albert Kim. We'll take a look at this when I go through all of this, I guess, if that's the case. The quote seems to be, "Here we're seeing Firelord Sozin, the person who actually launched the campaign and set the world on the course that we find it in." So you get to see Sozin here attacking Monk Gyatso. So yeah, it seems like that is confirmed, I guess, from the showrunner, that going back up here, this scene, it is Sozin attacking Gyatso, as we all thought. So that makes sense, I think, because there seemed to be a lot of confusion about this. People arguing that, like, it's this character or that character, but no, it is in fact Firelord Sozin. So that is very, very interesting to see. Obviously, like, if they continue, and I assume they will get their season 2 and 3, Avatar and the Firelord will also, I guess, include a Sozin who maybe doesn't look quite this old, but that is sort of the interesting one here, because yeah, this would be what, if they keep it the same, this would be like, yeah, 82-year-old Sozin. I think that's how that all works. So slight, like you can also see it as, like, yeah, they could do the same actor for 70-year-old Sozin doing the Death of Roku kind of sequence. So yeah, that's all cool. So yeah, we'll take a look at some of that stuff later. But yeah, we just had the June moment, of course. We took a look at the other shot here. So yeah, June, how big of a role is she going to have? Or will we maybe potentially only see June in one episode, or like a scene in one episode and then her in action in another episode? I don't, at least to me, I don't obviously get the impression that, like, there's going to be a lot of June. I kind of do feel like it's just like, okay, we want to show you June, we want to show you the Shirshu, but it will just be like, we hire her one time to track down the gang. But probably used somewhere else, because while I think they could maybe do some of the Bato stuff, I don't really know what the full situation is. Then we get Aang kind of flying in here. Now, where is this? This one is a kind of, again, one of these kind of random shots here that's maybe a little bit hard to place. Like, is this Pohai's stronghold Aang flying in here, or not sure about this one, actually. But I'm guessing this is probably Blue Spirit, because that's one of the few places where I think he seems to be, like, on his own at night and stuff like that seems to be happening. But we'll see what the chat have to say about this shot. And then, yeah, Heibai. We do get to see Heibai. So this is Heibai in his, like, angry dark spirit form, whatever way you want to call it. Very, very vicious looking here with the teeth and stuff like that. But you can still see the colors and the black kind of pieces and the blotches of white and stuff like that. You can still get the whole, it's the black and white spirit for certain. And then I think the shot that makes it even clearer here is the split second you do get to see the big shoulder that the dark design of Heibai comes into play. So you can see that here. Very much confirming it, just because it goes by in a flash if you're just watching the trailer without kind of going through it frame by frame. But it's definitely Heibai. So they seem to be committing to this as like they're going for the core of what this episode is. I'm wondering, will they get the kind of terminology and the mechanics of the spirit world and all that sort of stuff right? How they'll go about explaining that in this episode, because obviously, famously, in terms of like detailed spirit world stuff, this is a very like odd episode of Avatar where it's the introduction of the spirit world, but like we don't see the spirit world. So I wonder, will that be a case of like they know what it's like later on when they clarify it a lot more? So will they be able to make it a little clearer? Just when it comes to the whole like Aang's spirit is separated from his body, but his spirit is not in the spirit world situation. But still, it looks fantastic. And then obviously from, I think I have it, where do I have it actually? Might be here. I think we have, yeah. So this is what a statue of what Heibai in his normal form looks like. So they seem to, I guess, just be committing to the idea of like, yeah, he is just a big panda when he's not angry about things, and he is just the guardian of this forest. So cool that we have at least a sense for both sides of Heibai here from the bits and pieces that we have. Do I think it looks spirity enough? Yeah, so this is obviously the question here. Does this look maybe too much like a creature? As in, like, we just see Nyla up here as like a creature. But then this, obviously, it's not an animal. It's a spirit. Are we okay with that? I think it's interesting because there obviously has to be a certain amount of physicality to a spirit. And I do appreciate that, like, it doesn't seem to be, like, furry at all. Like, it doesn't have fur or anything like that. It does seem almost kind of, like, reptile kind of like here, which is interesting. And then, of course, in its panda form, I guess it'll be more furry. But it's also difficult in terms of, like, what should it look like to be more spirity is sort of the question. Like, should it have a glow around it? Like, what, like, that's the kind of real kind of question that we have here. Whereas, like, in the animation, they can, like, do stuff, I think, to make it clearer that it is obviously a spirit. Whereas, like, they have to have textures in a very realistic type setting. And it's just an interesting one. Again, it depends how they do it. Like, Heibai, a lot of how spirity Heibai is will completely depend on how he's used as we go through the scenes. Like, as he interacts with the environment, starts firing off, like, his spirit beam and stuff like that, taking people into the spirit world and stuff like that. When we see how they do, like, Aang's spirit separate and stuff like that, that'll be the real kind of interesting kind of question that we need answered about this. So, yeah, I think it looks pretty good. Maybe a little bit too much going on with the teeth. That maybe leans it a little bit too much into the beast side of things. But I think I'm okay with it just because its normal form is a panda. And so it being in this kind of darker form and having kind of crazy teeth, I'm fine with that, ultimately. So that's perfectly fine. As for the question of, like, what's with its eyes, well, this is how Heibai looks like this. It just has the different kind of blotches of colors. Like, technically, I think this little patch of white is kind of meant to be basically its eyes, or this little dot here. That's just, even if you look at the animation model of this, that's just how it actually is. I think they might get rid of the beam. They can't get rid of the spirit beam. Now, I don't really care too much about that, but like, it's Heibai's like main thing he does other than just rampage around. So I'd like it to be kind of kept in to a certain degree, because it's kind of consistent with what he does. Like, that it's part of how Heibai operates. Is Heibai also has the spirit beam, which is why I always get really weirded out when people suddenly start going like, it's like, oh my, this is not Avatar. Why are all powerful spirits? Why do they have spirit beams? Why does Rava fire a spirit beam and all this sort of stuff? It's like, well, debut spirit here basically had a spirit beam. So there's that. And then, yeah, that's Heibai. Then we get a quick scene of Aang kind of making a mist rise up in or around him. So that's kind of cool. And then we get this shot. So this is where I suppose we have the confirmation here. We were wondering about this from the teaser trailer. Is this character Zhao? And I think most people couldn't really fully make their mind up because it was so kind of far away. But it does seem like this is Zhao. So Zhao obviously has a different look earlier on in the season than he does later on in the season. And they are committing to having Zhao be the one who attacks Kyoshi Island. Now, how exactly this works with how many characters are in or around here and involved, that's a little bit of an interesting one. Because it obviously suggests that there'll be, I guess, more groupings, more use of specific characters and stuff like that. Like, how involved is Zuko in this? Or have they just removed Zuko from this one? Because that could be an interesting one as well. Like, is Zuko just not here? Or, so that's that. But yeah, you also see Yukari here. So I guess Suki and her mother, Yukari, who we know is the head of the village, she's going to be here. So I guess this is negotiations starting here about what exactly they want done here. And we have to assume Zhao's probably just going to want to go in here and be like, by decree of Fire Lord Ozai, this place is now under the control of the Fire Nation. And we'll see how Yukari and Suki handle this as like the two of the kind of main leader characters. I wonder, will there be any kind of drama about this when it comes to like, is Yukari going to be presented as this like very strong leader who's like, no, we'll fight against you? Or will she be portrayed as, no, I need to protect the village, but Suki's the one who kind of wants to fight, and because Sokka is also probably going to want to fight, that inspires Suki more. Will that be kind of part of the angle they play with this? Or will Suki and her mother be kind of united in the direction here? That'll be the big question I think that we have. Because there's a few interesting things with the introduction of Yukari to effectively replace the character of Oyaji, which is like, did she used to be a Kyoshi warrior? Is that maybe why Suki became a Kyoshi warrior? Or do they just have separate paths? There's some interesting stuff they can do here to add a bit of depth to this. But I'm intrigued to see how they use one of the most obvious kind of new characters in the show. So there is that. So yeah, a lot of people being like, yeah, interesting change here. But I guess this is what they want to do. But I'm assuming this is probably just to help Zhao out. That if they're going to have more scenes with Azula in play from the beginning, that might take away from Zhao's role as a villain. So because Zuko's a main character, they might have just maneuvered things around in that way, just so like he gets a bigger moment early on. Where like, does he go straight from the Zuko Agni Kai to here? And where is Zuko during all of this? But yeah, there is Zhao. Then we get some action shots here, which are kind of cool. So we see a fire punch come in. Kyoshi warriors block it with their fans. Then we see a shot come in against Suki and Sokka, who are back to back. And Suki kind of like rotates them around, and they do an interesting shot. It happens really quickly here, where it's like you see it coming straight at them, and immediately the shot switches above, and you see Suki deflected off to the side. And then they quickly transition into Sokka kind of spinning out of that and going very low on this Fire Nation warrior soldier here with the club. And then again, they show another shot of this. So they're really going to emphasize Sokka and Suki fighting side by side in the village here. Very interested to see how much attention the whole Kyoshi stuff gets, because it seems like they're really setting this up as like a full-on set piece. Like this will be like pretty much like an entire episode. So I'm guessing that's probably what they're going to do. That like they'll have Kyoshi just be one of Zhao's big attacks, and they really emphasize like maybe Aang learning about Kyoshi. This is one of Sokka's big moments in the plot, of course. And then Omashu is where maybe Azula strikes first, and we that's the way we go about doing it. So some interesting kind of plates to spin here, just with regards to like Zuko, Azula, and Zhao all in play, and all apparently getting good screen time if they're saying what they're saying about the usage of Azula. Interesting stuff. Another really nice shot, more from above, of Omashu, which I continue to maintain. I think Omashu as like an environment is probably the best looking kind of stuff I've seen in the trailer. I just think it looks really, really good. Also, this is where we see the Teo's flying stuff here. So another confirmation, I guess, if the first one above wasn't super clear, that yes, Teo is here in Omashu, and that is a somewhat notable change there, is that. And like I said earlier, I'm guessing it's just that they'll be like, Teo, the Mechanist, and so on, refugees came to Omashu for safety. Omashu is one of the last big, still standing, still under Earth Kingdom control, Earth Kingdom cities. I think that's what they're going to emphasize here. Last major holdout, but we'll see maybe the kind of path laid for its fall probably in this earlier episode. And then if we do come back there in season 2, they can emphasize that, like, yeah, it didn't go so well afterwards. But yeah, very cool stuff there. Then we get this shot, which is, it's underground. And Aang has obviously just come back from having done quite a lot. It seems like Sokka and Katara are also very tired. And I'm kind of like, are we doing Cave of Two Lovers like in book 1? Are we doing all of the Omashu stuff in book 1? Because there's a few times where you can theoretically do underground stuff, but this certainly feels like a reunion after quite a lot has happened. Let's see. The other one is thinking it's after Blue Spirit. That's another actual opportunity that, like, yeah, if they do the whole Aang has to leave because Sokka and Katara are sick, this could be the grand return of Aang, and they still look like they're kind of out of it, but we have to wait and see. That's an interesting one. But yeah, they definitely just wanted to have the scene there, mainly from a visual perspective of just like Aang hugging his friends. Because I think it's at this point in the trailer they do some of the dialogue. They do, which one is that? Yeah, they play one of the bits of dialogue during the kind of hug scene just to kind of emphasize that. But we'll come back around to it. Let's see a question there. How funny will Sokka be? So far, it seems like they're not avoiding humor. They're doing little bits and pieces. Let me find the kind of bits so far. Like, they're doing the whole, like, of course, let's make fun of Sokka. Momo lands on Sokka's head after he kind of gives the nice speech. That's a kind of fun moment for Sokka. The big one, though, from the trailer is definitely the kind of, like, snappy comment bit here of just like, hey, Katara, your hero is so amazing. He just smashed into a wall over there, as we see here. So he just makes the comment really casually, eats his food. That feels very Sokka to me. So I think, it'll depend how funny are they going to make Sokka. Seems like the balance is pretty good. overall. So there's that. But yeah, we were back down here at the interesting cave scene. Yes. So yeah, might not be Cave of Two Lovers. Could be Blue Spirit. Could be. Yeah, could be a bit of anywhere actually. So there's that. So yes. Yeah, what's the statue that he runs into at Kyoshi Island? It just seems to be a cat owl statue, which I guess is it's kind of interesting. But I guess they just want to have statues around that. It is a pretty common thing in Avatar to just have like statues of animal around the place, so that's kind of interesting. But we move on, and we do get Blue Spirit. So you can see here dual swords, very nice. The mask is extraordinarily accurate, like. To a point where I'm like, wow, they really made this like absolutely pretty much spot on accurate to what we expected here. I was like just seeing the trailer and like, whoa, that's really, really accurate here. And I'm glad they didn't kind of feel the need to overdo it. Like, the Blue Spirit, the way they did it in the movie was very weird. I sort of get they maybe had a bit of a different origin there about the Blue Spirit. It was actually entirely different, if I remember correctly, because like Zuko had the whole backstory where like part of his training was with an actual person called like the Red Spirit, and they were more emphasizing that it's like actual people kind of things versus them being sort of like stage or play masks. Whereas in this case, they're obviously just going for the standard one, and I think it makes complete sense. It looks pretty cool here, where they're having the fight up on the wall here. And yeah, we see some cool sword play from the Blue Spirit. And then Aang leaps into the air off Zuko's back, does the sort of like air ground slam. And because they're in like a kind of wedge, the air just like makes people like erupt out of it. It's a very cool move that perfectly fits the kind of environment here. So I'm guessing this sequence, like they do in the obviously original episode, like they do in the last Airbender movie, and like they do here, they're emphasizing this action set piece quite a lot. So intrigued to see how this all goes down, in the sense of like, we saw Azula with the bow earlier on, so like, is Aang still going to get captured here by the Yuyan archers? Will it be the Yuyan archers led by Azula? Probably not. But anyway, an interesting one anyway. Then we cut to this, which I'm guessing this is that sequence at the start of the siege where Aang goes out and attacks, and then he comes back and is like, I took down a ship, it was so difficult, and there's still so many more of them. I'm guessing it's that, or is there anything else it could be, actually? Or is this just like end of 102? They're probably the two options here. Like, is this Zuko's ship here, or is this one of the invading ships that we're dealing with here? I'm not sure it's incredibly obvious, because we cut from this scene to the next one. Let's see, have you talked about the video with the producers talk about the trailer? No, I've not got to that. I've not seen that yet. I'm pretty sure that just came out very, like, in or around the time I started this. We'll come around to that and see what happens with that one. But yeah, I think people are thinking like this is probably the finale one overall. Especially because the way this sequence goes, Aang kind of like jumps up here, but then he also jumps back down onto the ship. So I think it's very clearly him attacking one of the ships as at the start of the siege. I think that's what's happening here. Then we clearly, I think this is a case of this attack from Aang is going back to the Southern Water Tribe right at the start. This, I guess, is his like kind of big reveal moment where he's just like, I'm the one you're looking for. Then we get a Sokka action scene where he throws the boomerang, Aang dodges backwards, and we get the spark on the helmet, which is kind of fun. as Sokka takes out a Fire Nation soldier. Then we get Boomy. So we obviously saw this little clip of Boomy, maybe not as full as it was before, but we saw this particular bit of Boomy. Do we like this version of Boomy? I think it's probably the best possible take they could have on such a, in a way, like, weird design, weird character to try and embody in live action. I think they did the best that they possibly can. I would still be like, I'm not like absolutely kind of blown away by it, but I think, like I said, I think they did probably the best they could do, because Boomy's so difficult, I think, to even attempt to do in live action. And a lot will depend on, like, the mannerisms, the actual performance when he speaks and stuff like that, because if he embodies the character well, I can be okay with him looking a little bit off. And I think if you watch the cast trailer breakdown, I think Aang's actor mentions that, like, they were seeing the Boomy actor kind of walking around, like, really slowly and doing kind of fun, odd stuff. So at least in their opinion, I think they're pretty impressed with the portrayal of Boomy by this actor. So I think this is always going to be a bit of a controversial one, just because it's like you're trying to portray someone who is literally 112 years old and has the weird gimmick of acting like the most frail person in the world, but then revealing they're actually one of the literal strongest people in the world. It looks fine overall. The move that Boomy does, this is maybe where there's a little bit more of a, like, I'm not sure about it, because he kind of does a like sideways kind of chop through the top of the earth here. And the earthbending here is very much portrayed as being like a shower of pebbles, rather than like when you typically have the stone column, you're sending out like giant chunks of it, which is like typically how we see it most of the time. So the portrayal here is interesting. And I think this is probably the most like agreed upon thing, where like maybe the first example of like not perfectly done here. But I like Aang's movement. I'm not the biggest fan of the move that Boomy does. Maybe he does better moves in the rest of the fight. I like Aang's movements, because you can see the kind of spiral kind of movements here as he like moves his hand and creates the gust to block the kind of stream of pebbles coming in. He does a flip here to further generate the wind and stuff like that, and blocks more. So I think this section, Aang's movements look pretty good overall. I'd just be a little bit like, why is Boomy only attacking with like pebbles, basically? And that might just be a case of like, well, how do we realistically showcase earthbending? Like, should it be giant boulders, or should it be more like a storm of kind of like pebbles and stuff like that? Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think a lot of the bending looks fine. I definitely want to see more of it. But yeah, I'd say air and fire. Yeah, I probably agree with that. Yeah, airbending and firebending moves have looked authentic. Not sure about waterbending and earthbending. I think waterbending, I think, looks pretty good from the little scene. I'm only probably not sure about the earthbending. But we'll get to that now. So Katara, I apologize for the quality of these, like trying to get good screenshots that are not kind of messed up. But straight away, this scene here of Katara bending, is this a Karuk statue? Is it a Karuk statue, or is it just a random Water Tribe character? I feel it's probably meant to be Karuk, maybe. But I'm not really sure. But we know Karuk apparently is going to be like, they're doing stuff with Karuk, definitely. So there's that. But yeah, the actual move from Katara, I kind of like it. I'm assuming this is maybe when the moon is up, because because it seems very powerful, kind of what she does here. So she kind of comes around, she brings the water kind of with her in an arc, then she kind of twists and kind of comes around to face Zuko. So the water kind of comes around with her. So she has it there as the shield in front of her as Zuko fires his attack in, which he of course blocks with the kind of core mass of the water. And then she defends it so strongly, like as I suppose the rest of the water kind of comes in, she blocks his fire, and then the kind of tendrils of ice come around it. So it seems like this is like Katara overpowering Zuko in this scene. Maybe it cuts off, maybe he does fight through this, but it seems like it's a pretty powerful defensive move from Katara here that actually looks, I think, pretty good. Let's see. So yeah, there seems to be the agreement that the statue here is Karuk, which I think would probably make sense. So yeah, you do sort of wonder exactly where exactly this is taking place. Like, we're assuming that somewhere in this vicinity is how you get to the spirit oasis with the koi fish, the ocean and moon spirit. That's that. Then we get the shot with Jet, which I actually think is pretty cool. So basically, he just kind of steps out in front of Katara and does this really cool move as he walks forward, like spinning with the swords. Just blocks attack, and then I think he comes through with both swords at the end to block another one. So, multiple times in the trailer, examples of skilled non-bender fighters, basically bashing fire attacks off to the side. Like we see the Kyoshi warriors do it. Jet can do it with his swords. So I think it looks pretty cool, and it's relatively dynamic as well. I think, again, this is where I think when they discussed this in the cast trailer analysis, they mentioned that like this moment, I think they said, is one of Katara's first times fighting, not around her usual team. So it'll be interesting to see how they kind of portray that exactly. So at the very least, they seem to be, I suppose, maybe getting across the idea here that while they might not do the full episode of Jet, the group meeting Jet will result in like Katara kind of going off with Jet somewhere, and they have to still have maybe the rest of the team kind of come over to kind of maybe sort out whatever's going on. I believe we do know that at least some of the other Freedom Fighter members have been cast. We just don't see them here yet, so we don't really know the full scope of how involved the whole Jet kind of plot line is going to be. But they, of course, have to use him in, I guess, in book 2, because there's other stuff kind of with him. But yeah, there's just some of that stuff. Then there's just some quick shots. I think most of this is just kind of fight scenes here towards the end of the trailer. So we start here. We have Zuko, obviously from like the first or second episode, or of the animation anyway. In the adaptation, it's probably from the first episode, obviously. Zuko attacks, Aang defends, and we get this cool clash of fire and air that basically creates this like wall and like an explosion up into the air, as it's like a perfect explosive clash of the two in the Southern Water Tribe. Then we basically end with the tease of the Avatar state. I like the music here. They build up to it, but then cut it off right before we see it happen. Now, this seems to be happening in the Southern Air Temple. So I'm guessing... It's a weird one, because like, is he doing this out of emotion? Like, is this him seeing the aftermath, I suppose, effectively? Has Aang just seen the aftermath of this? Like, is where he's standing there, like, this room, just post-destruction? And he has seen, like, the remains of Gyatso, and this is him going into the Avatar state because of that? Because it definitely looks like an air temple here where this is happening, because you see the gates that kind of maybe open out. He's rising off the ground. There's a lot of ash on the ground. the arrow tattoos lighting up. You get a glimpse of the full face, of course, but you see the main parts, the arrow on the forehead and the eyes, which is nice. And that is where they end the trailer. So they don't show you the power of the avatar state activating, but they at least tease it nearly right up to that point. So that's that. Then, like I said earlier, there was a few extra kind of high quality screenshots that they put out that I showed off already. Here's a full shot of Nyla, as well as June, obviously, meeting up with Zuko. So this is obviously where they come into contact with her or hire her. So that's nice. There is a very high quality shot of Heibai, and we also have the ostrich horse scene here, obviously. So you do get a better look at it there. So I'm guessing this is this is when they, I suppose, change back into their normal clothes and I suppose go about their business after all of that. Is that like they take an ostrich horse from the soldiers, I'm guessing? And then we have this here. So I'm guessing this is either just before or just after the fight with Boomy. Because like there's a lot of rock around here. This seems to look roughly like the arena. It's clearly got some fancy kind of earth kind of stuff going on here. And it looks like the fighting arena here. So is this going to be the, the kind of aftermath of all of that? Interesting. Is this the what is my name kind of situation? So that's that. And then on the social media, has there been anything else here? I'll check out that interview when we get to it. Okay. So yeah, there's that. Thoughts on Suki in the trailer? Looks good. I'm interested to see just how used she is in the sense of like. Let me just find the Suki stuff here. So there's a shot of Suki. I'm interested to know, like, is it just that she is a main character in the Kyoshi episode, or do we get to see more of her in this season? Because I'm assuming they'll still have the rough idea of like she's not with the group the entire way through. So I think it's clear that she obviously doesn't join the group, so they're still going to have her break away from that. But like, are they going to cover some of the stuff that we learned from like Suki alone about like what's going on there? Does Yukari, her mother, does that like link into that? Like, is she not allowed to go with the group because of her mother? And that will kind of build up over time, and will that'll be part of her arc that we maybe get. That's the kind of the main thing that I'd have here, is just like how many of these kind of characters like Suki, June, Boomy, are they just in the one episode that we kind of expect them to be in, or like for season 1 anyway, or are we doing more with them? That's the real question I have, because there's only so many plots you can cover at the same time, and the fact that we already know like that there's going to be a little bit more Ozai, there's going to be a little bit more Azula than we expect, it doesn't really leave a lot of time to add giant amounts of extra stuff with some of these other characters, when like getting to like the Serpent's Pass style moment in book 2 with Suki is very important. The Boiling Rock in season 3 is particularly important, when she properly joins the group. They're the big moments that we're kind of waiting for. But yeah, let's see what's going on here. So IGN, it's a video, 22 minutes long. And then let's see, what are they doing throughout this? Again, this is one of these things where like this is kind of hard to show off here, because again they are using footage in the video, and I don't want to have my video get like affected by showing off that sort of stuff. So what I'll do here is I think we'll just kind of go through it. We'll all try and kind of maybe watch this together. I'll link this in the chat, and we can try and maybe go through this, listen to it together. I'll put up some of the comments and we'll see how this goes. So this is the video, I believe, that has been referenced a couple of times in the chat. You'll see the link there. Because because it has footage and like audio and stuff like that, I'm not sure how okay it is to like just play it during this. So let's see. There's a transcript in the article. Is there? Okay, this is the videos page. They must have a news article that features this. Oh yeah, here. Article. Okay, yeah, this is actually better. Yeah, so I could show this. I'll link it as well, actually, for anyone wanting to see it. So this is the article version of it. So yeah, we'll take a look at this. Okay. So, let me just stop this. So, producer reveals secrets from the new trailer from IGN. Okay, so this is just intro stuff. They've got a bunch of images as well. So, okay. So Albert Kim is going to take us through this, and we'll see how this goes. So, open the shot of Fire Nation fleet. At the same time, we hear the voiceover from Gyatso talking about the threat of the Fire Nation, how they're out to conquer the world. Okay. And Gyatso is a character that if you're a fan of the show, you're very familiar with. But even if you're not, you should be able to recognize that he's authoritative and warm and scholarly. We had an amazing actor, Lim K-Siu, who's from Singapore. He plays Gyatso. He represents all of these things. I think people are really going to love him. And he's the one who actually sets up the stakes for this world. That's an interesting line, actually, about Gyatso. So Gyatso is the one who sets up the stakes for this world. So I'm guessing they obviously play up really heavily the drama of what happens in Aang's backstory just prior to leaving, and the fact that like he leaves Aang with these lines of dialogue. Like he makes it very clear the importance of the role of the Avatar. And then I'm guessing whatever happens in that fight with Sozin, I'm interested to see how they portray that. Like, does he just get defeated by the power of a Sozin's Comet-enhanced, like, Fire Lord? Or does he, like, injure Sozin in some way and, like, maybe sets up the stage where, like, you know, this is why we have to go to the next Fire Lord? Like, there's a few things they can do to make Gyatso feel very important, even if he's dead, like, 100 years at the time of the show. Right, Sani. So the situation here is, and VFX supervisor Jabbar Raisani. So they're the two people that are being interviewed here. So it comes to a setting like this, the burned forest. It shows the scope and scale of the show. It's really a road show. Okay, so that makes a lot of sense. They try to go to lots of different places. Makes sense. Let's see. So Katara is not the narrator. I wouldn't take that to mean that. Like, I'm assuming they'll probably still keep the general framing of, like, when they do the intro to the show, that, like, or actually, like, will they? I'm not actually sure that that's probably locked in at this point, because if they're going to go full on, like, the lore of his history-wise what happens, they're going to show it to you. Do they need to have the Katara narration? I'm assuming that will come into play somehow, but doesn't make Katara in this version the full-on narrator of the show. That'll be an interesting one to see how they do that. Let's see. Strong eco message. Burnt forest. Yeah, it makes sense. A glimpse of Appa here. You'll see through the sounds that Appa makes, the movements that he makes, that they try to really bring the digital character to life as much as any of the live action characters. So that's good to hear, that one of the main VFX people knows that, like, it's important to get across the character of Appa just as much as the general just look. So that's very good. Where is the Cabbage Man? The Cabbage Man, let's see, I think I have that here somewhere. We can see the Cabbage Merchant. There he is. Well, at least, like, part of the cabbage cart is there. If you look at the original shot of this, there is the cabbage cart when the doors, the gates of Omashu opens. But that's that. But yeah, they obviously don't show it here. I'm assuming they'll have some sort of a little video clip type thing, maybe closer to the release of the show. They'll do some sort of a teaser with the Cabbage Merchant, I think. It feels too obvious not to use that as a major little clip to put out there, just because everyone knows the Cabbage Merchant is such a well-known kind of minor character. Appa is a character is basically the idea that is being got across here. The attack on the Southern Air Temple by the Firebenders. It's the event that really kicks off this whole journey. Not seen in the original series. He's filling in. One of the reasons for doing this adaptation is to fill in the gaps. This is one of the big gaps of the original series. There's a good reason why they didn't do it, but for us, we felt it was needed. Genocide of the Air Nomads and the events. This is the event that the Fire Nation attacked and changed everything. So we get to portray that. Let's see. And they're talking about the tone here, that this is tonally different, and that for it being a Nickelodeon show, could they have leaned into it as much as they're actually able to here? With the live action format, them being on Netflix, they can be a little bit darker and showcase like what's going to happen here. Because again, I think I roughly mentioned this like a minute or two ago, but like, how crazy is the end sequence of like this fight going to be? When are they going to cut the flashback off? Like, are we going to get to see like Gyatso's death scene, like him going down? The real like how brutal are they going to be about showing all these airbenders getting killed here? That's for me going to be like the big thing here, in terms of like that, because obviously like it's called a genocide for a reason. The show's called Avatar: The Last Airbender for a reason. How in depth can they even go as well? Like, it's one thing to roughly show the events, but like, how crazy is it going to be what we actually get to see here? So there's a confirmation that this character is in fact Sozin. He actually launched a campaign, set the world on the course that we find it in. Again, a scene that we don't see. So we can see Sozin here attacking Monkey Gyatso, so there's that confirmation as well. Important moment in the story. It kicks off the entire journey. It was important that we started the whole show on that. Now, again, it's important to realize in terms of canon, this doesn't necessarily mean that just because we never see the Air Nomad genocide, that this is what happens in the animation, even though we didn't see it. That's one of those things where, like, unless that is worded in a very specific way by the right people, you cannot confirm that this piece of content related to this continuity, the live action Netflix continuity, really in any way impacts the animation continuity that we know. Because obviously you have situations like Yukari, where she's presented as the leader of the village. Oyaji doesn't seem to exist in this version of the show. There's a contradiction between the both kind of times. Obviously, we also saw, as we went through the trailer, Teo in Omashu. That doesn't happen. So there's kind of, it goes both ways, I suppose. We'll see how they go about really doing a lot of that stuff. But helpful for the timeline. And I think that's a fair point as well, that it does take until book 3 for you to, I suppose, properly get that sense of like, and this is how the war started. In this version, they're making that a little bit clearer, like earlier on. So that's interesting. Let's see. Here we're seeing the iceberg. This is the iceberg that Katara and Sokka discover Aang in. Iconic. Yes. Familiar images. The beam of light that shoots into the sky. Okay. And they just try to replicate it very well. So yeah, they're for very key visual moments, they're trying their best that they can to make it work. Let's see. This is where they first discover Aang. Yep, it changed their lives. Yeah, he's the hope for the world. That's the whole idea here, especially for Katara, and especially with the animation, it being kind of like her story, how her finding Aang affects things so much, and that whole situation. Ozai. So yeah, it's just a lot of praise for Daniel Day Kim, which makes sense, but not a lot of detail given on the scene specifically. Ostrich horse, hybrid creature. Practically on set, there were stunt drivers underneath these actors who were riding on top of them. Digitally recreated this the creature in its entirety. So there you go. Southern Air Temple, so that's there. Witnessing the devastation that occurs. Aang is seeing his home and what's become of it. This is when the shock of the war really hits him. Okay, so this is confirmation that obviously we're getting quite a bit of 103, obviously. He's realized that all of this time was a result of him not fulfilling his duties as the Avatar. That's the burden that he carries. So yeah, that makes complete sense. That's exactly what happens in the show. They're emphasizing so you can see there the mention of like Wolf Cove as being like the capital of the Southern Water Tribe. That is basically like a detail they basically got from Avatar Studios. So that's that. So they're new to basically the entire rest of the world. And yeah, understanding of Katara's character. She sees Aang as the symbol of hope. She's the first one to see that. So they're still emphasizing that like important aspect of her character. Message of hope spread throughout the world. Yes. The dynamic between brother and sister. So yeah, a lot of this is just like, okay, the showrunner understands the characters and that's what they're doing in the show. This stuff makes a lot of sense. They're not going to change these fundamental aspects of who the characters are. I just think that makes too much sense. So yeah, Kyoshi Island, Japanese inspired. Okay, so they're echoing the famous gag during the title sequence. Emphasizing the goofy aspect, the joke from Sokka, of course. Yeah, makes sense. And they obviously knew that this was an important trailer shot to have as well, because it would be very much recognized, obviously, as we all know. Iroh, important dynamic. Okay, so Zuko's arguably the most popular character from the original series. That's fair enough. In general, we actually spend a lot more time with the Fire Nation and the Fire Nation characters in our first season than they did in the original series. This was a very conscious choice. I feel it's important that we balance out the story that way. So you end up seeing a lot more of Ozai and Azula than you did in the first season of the animated show. So there you go. So there's your really, really obvious idea of what they're doing here. They're making an effort they have the obvious arcs that they need to do, but they're doing more with some of the other characters as well. Let's see, so no Sokka sexist arc. I'm assuming they'll still have the Sokka Suki introduction go a very specific way, because, where did they mention it again? Yeah, both of their first time traveling outside the world. And because of that, I think part of like Sokka's whole aspect of that is that it's his first time like meeting like other warriors and stuff like that, and because of the situation in their tribe, like his first real time meeting a female warrior character. They might not emphasize it as much, but I'm assuming it will still be part of the Sokka Suki dynamic. It's just like how much focus it gets. Is it just like one or two moments or not? It's obviously hard to tell. So there's that. Zuko's goal, of course, makes sense. Yes. Iroh's firebending. We really tried to differentiate the bending as much as we could while making it feel like a unified event. As in, all of our firebending should look like firebending, but Iroh's looks slightly different than Zuko's, which looks slightly different than Ozai's, which looks slightly different than Azula's, and we also tried to differentiate them with sound design. So if you listen really closely when Iroh bends, you'll almost hear a dragon sound underneath all of that bending. That's an interesting one that they made that specific choice to, I suppose, emphasize the idea that, like, he knows the true way of firebending from the dragons. And then you have sort of like Ozai as like the master of the very modern style of firebending, and then Zuko as, I suppose, some kind of mix kind of in between, because he's being trained by Iroh right now, but like he comes from the culture where things are going in a specific direction with firebending. So interesting that they thought about all this stuff. Agni Kai between Zuko and Ozai. Yes, the defining moment of Zuko's life, definitely. It's how he gets the scar on his eye. This is a scene that was not seen in the original series. It was kind of obliquely shown, but we... Okay, so they're just going with the idea that they're just going to have the scene play out, whereas like Avatar obviously shows it to you, but is like, and you know what happens next. Like, you don't need to see this whole thing. So that's fair enough. They choreographed the whole fight. It's an interesting choice, because obviously in the animation it's not a fight like at all. So this is obviously suggesting that like Zuko fights back initially, which kind of changes a little bit of the kind of dynamic, I guess, of like what's happening here. So it'll be interesting to see how that one actually works like in practice. Like, was this the right decision to make that change versus the animation, which just like made it clear that Zuko couldn't fight back against Ozai, and Ozai still scars him, versus in this case Ozai actually beats him in a fight they actually have and then scars him. That could work, or it could be like, you probably should have done it the other way. That's going to be an interesting one to see how they do that. So that's an interesting one. Okay, we get confirmation here. This is in episode 6. So that's an interesting thing. We haven't really heard much talk of a lot of that stuff of like, oh yeah, this is from that episode. So that's an interesting one. So there's 8 episodes. This is from the third last episode. It really goes to the core of Zuko's story and Zuko's journey. Let me just actually check. Where do I have my... 6 masks. So at least if this list is accurate and continues to be accurate, the episode called Masks is going to be the one where we get the backstory, which I guess makes sense. Like, I'm assuming that's probably where the Blue Spirit stuff, I guess, happens, and they explain some of that stuff, and makes sense. Let's see. What does his father really want? Does he want him to succeed? Is he using him against his sister? Okay. Okay, so they're just trying to help people who do and don't know it, which is a bit of an interesting way to look at it, but makes sense. Let's see. Here we're seeing Aang talk to his best friend Appa. Much more than just a creature. He's a character, of course. We need to make sure that we got him right along with Momo and the other creatures we see in the trailer. I think once fans see the level of attention and detail, they'll understand that it was important to us to get them as right as possible. Yep. The performance is also very good here. And then, yeah, you're looking at this green thing that isn't Appa, but we need to pull all that emotion out of you. So, yeah, the whole green screen thing of just like, I guess he just had to hug like a green wedge or something like that and just hope that it all worked. That's the interesting one. Let's see, I thought there were 10 episodes. As far as I'm aware, we have known for some time that it is 8 episodes. But I'm not sure, again, if this is just like a rumor that has basically been like confirmed, or if they directly ever said this. I'm pretty sure at some point we did get like the writers of every episode, and that covered up to 8 episodes. So I think it's basically confirmed, but not like in the most hyper official way possible. But there's 8 episodes. I think everyone pretty much knows. Might we see the Mother of Faces in the Mask episode? I would be very surprised if we see the Mother of Faces in the Mask episode. Unless they do some crazy stuff when it comes to like Zuko's backstory and like incorporating Ursa stuff in very heavily from an early point. Maybe you can do it, but I'd be very surprised if they go into the comic material much of, if at all, especially like early on in terms of backstory stuff. But we'll see. We'll see. There's opportunities to do some things about that, but we'll see. One day, Gordon was acting against the giant blue mask that was moving up and down in front of him. Okay, so that's how they did it. He didn't see the finished moment, so it was a difficult acting challenge. So yeah, just the behind the scenes stuff of like this very emotional moment is just him hugging a giant blue mask. Here's Momo, a digital creature. We have a little live action puppet that we put on set so everyone knows what we're doing. But again, Ian Sokka here did just a great job covering it. We didn't want to lose. Was Sokka not just being the butt of every joke, but having a lot of humor associated with Sokka? And he brought that to the show. Yeah, because that's the important thing with Sokka, is that you want to bring humor in, but not have him just... The joke is Sokka in every single scene. You can do that in certain scenes, but it doesn't have to be all the time. And I think they did that well here, where like he's kind of a little bit of like the butt of this joke because Momo's on top of him, landed on his head. But then in the other one, he gets to make fun of Aang with like a snappy line. So that's kind of nice. Let's see. And yeah, just the kind of light-hearted moments, goofy moments in the middle of all of this, because they are still kids. That's what the animation always got right, and they're trying to do that here as well. June and Nyla. Okay, yeah, actor did a great job. It's just a really fun series of beats with her in the show, and I think fans who know the series are really going to love her adaptation of that character. It was something really fun to work on. Okay, what does Albert Kim have to say about June? Okay, the Asian talent in the show, of course. Everyone's, for the most part, really liked the casting. All of these actors. Representation, of course. Okay, so he doesn't really talk about the role of June in terms of if it's changed or not compared to other stuff, but he mainly uses this to emphasize the amazing cast that they have. So that's that. Okay, Heibai. Iconic creatures from the original series. A level of attention that was above and beyond. We had to translate it from basically 2D to 3D. Yeah, they had to consider the texture of the skin, the colors involved, what were his teeth like, musculature, skeleton, all that sort of stuff. So, yeah, the complexities of going into this. Yeah, how many discussions they had about the nature of Heibai's hide. Is it pebbly? Is it fur? Is it leathery? Is he more of a lizard creature? What's going on? So that is an interesting one. I suppose one thing I would just say in the commentary there is just like, they don't mention that he's a spirit. They use creature, and then talk about lizards, and then spirit feels a little bit like left off in the background. Am I worried that they're going to ignore that whole idea? No, because I don't think they can. It's literally in the episode called The Spirit World. I'm assuming they'll get all of this right, but it's just interesting that there's no specific mention about like, how do we incorporate the spirity aspect of Heibai into Heibai? Okay. Okay, here we go. Kyoshi Village. Let's see. What do we have here? Most... Okay, so this is mainly just the inspiration of Kyoshi. This is a full practical build, just a full street in this real village, which was amazing to see. So no real talk about like Yukari or like the specific role or any of the changes about like Zhao being there. Just some background information. Okay, here's Omashu. Now, what are they going to mention here? Omashu is a place and location that could only exist in fantasy. Okay. You had to build everything from scratch. And Jabbar directed this episode. Everything about it, color of rooftops, mechanics of the delivery system, every inch of the city. Okay. Incredible location, so they emphasized that as well. Deserts, ice caps. Okay. Angateo. So they full on confirm it here. If you missed it, I suppose there's that. So there's that. What do you think we'll get cut from season 1? Well, stuff that it seems like we know already. It doesn't seem like there is Haru. It doesn't seem like there's Teo. I'd be shocked if they did the Great Divide. Maybe there's a mention somewhere along the way, kind of like Ember Island players of like, oh look, it's the Great Divide, the largest canyon in the Earth Kingdom, and they just move on. I just don't think they have the time to do a lot of that detail required for any of that. And then I do think a lot of the episodes, like say 9, like 10, 11, 14, 15, 16, 17, those are your episodes where they're definitely kind of smashing a bunch of things together, where like I think June is going to be used in a way that doesn't necessarily relate to Bato or that specific, the location where that takes place in. It maybe Zhong is being kept back until next season, or will only have a super minor role, but I don't think Zhong is going to be used. So that's an interesting one. Obviously, this highlights that potentially Northern Air Temple isn't really going to maybe be a thing as much, or it will be used in a different way. It's just the idea of, because they only have 8 episodes, sure, time-wise, because the episodes are going to be like an hour, they have enough time to technically do a bit of everything, but they don't want individual episodes of this show to just be like, the first half is this episode, and then there's a cut, and we're just doing something completely different. They want to have that sense of continuity between the episodes, which the format of book 1 doesn't super offer you, especially at specific points. So there'll be quite a few cuts of things, depending on what you're looking for, but it does look like, for the most part, like, apart from like a handful of characters, we're going to at least get a look at, I think, nearly everyone, which is going to be interesting to see what people like, don't like, who, like, what choices are really, really not appreciated. What's the general consensus? Is the overall trailer overall promising? Yeah, the general response I've seen is pretty much universal praise to the trailer. Depending on how into just a live action adaptation you are, most people are pretty positive on what it is, depending on that. I think most of the elements of the trailer people are pretty impressed with. It seems like Boomy, does Boomy look good, is maybe the one like point of criticism that I think a lot of people commonly have. Otherwise, I think, they've done this very well. Like I said at the start, I think this has been a success. Like it's delivered, the marketing has worked. People, I think, are very excited for this. No sense that I think this trailer has made a lot of people go, oh, actually, this doesn't seem to be working out. But I think it's positive. I think it's very much following the same path as like Netflix One Piece, where I think there is a lot of people going like, actually, this is kind of working out okay. Now, to be fair, we do have to acknowledge that we have still seen very little. Even though we now have our second trailer, there's still so much that we haven't seen, like continuous shots. We haven't seen a full scene in terms of how the drama plays out. We haven't seen how an episode feels as a whole, how they transition between episodes. They're talking about how they're going to do this here, but when we actually see that thing, will it be good with the amount of time it was given and stuff like that? Trailers always are somewhat not super representative, just because you're seeing 2 seconds, 2 seconds, 2 seconds, cut, and they always show you the best. Like, what about showing us some of the scenes where it's a little bit more laid back, casual, those kind of transitionary moments. Those are the kind of moments where it's going to be like, yeah, each episode's going to be an hour. We're seeing the highlight moments from like 5 minutes of specific episodes. Like, there's a lot that we still need to see. But I think there's the general impression where like I don't get too much of an impression from most people that they think this is going to be bad. Like, I think it would shock most people if from here the reception when it actually comes out is that they butchered it, like it's bad, they really messed it up. I think it's shaping up to be, at the very least, it was good. And, you know, just that's a positive. That's a major positive because of what this could have potentially been. This could have been the last Airbender Mark II. But they've immediately already, I think, cleared that for the most part. That's the main thing there. But yeah, we'll continue with this. So yeah, Aang and Teo confirmed to be in Omashu. Let's see, the joy of flight. Okay, the fun side of his personality, obviously getting to fly, which is nice. Commander Zhao, one of the main villains of the first season. Antagonist for our heroes. This is him in Kyoshi Village attacking Kyoshi Island. It's based on a very famous episode from the original. Ken had a way of bringing Zhao to life that was incredible to see because he brought not only the humanity of the character, which sometimes I got to say might have been a little lacking in the animated show, but he also, you could see his ambition throughout the whole thing. This is one of those things where, like, this is a little bit of a commentary of just like, what do you mean by that? Like, this is a character who's very much defined by his ambition. And I get it, this is only a minor, like, along the way, subtle kind of criticism that, like, is Zhao the most fleshed out character? No. But what's being talked about here? Is this maybe the question of, like, basically, why is he so ambitious? That's probably maybe the depth that they're maybe talking about here with this character, is like, okay, he really wants to get into a high position in the Fire Nation, impress Ozai himself. But why? But what's so interesting if they're talking about doing more with Zhao is like, but potentially Zhang Zhang isn't in the show, which is a key part of his depth. So that's an interesting one to see how that all plays out in terms of like, is that just being sort of like, I'm not sure about that one, about like what exactly it's being referred to. Like, yeah, is Zhang Zhang just being held back until season 2? Or is he just gone and they're changing this? Like, are they going to do some different thing by, like, Ozai trained Zhao? That'd be a bit, like, odd. But who knows what the situation is. Yeah, over the course, his ego starts to swell as he gets more and more power. That makes sense. So they're going for this whole idea, the Moon Slayer, and he thinks a lot of himself at the end. But it is interesting that there's, at least at this point, there's no obvious mention of like, oh, it's a very famous episode from the show that doesn't feature Zhao attacking the village. It's like, wait, what? And that's just a weird part of some of these interviews, is he brings up some of the changes, but then he's not talking about this specific change. Like, why is it happening this way? First time we see benders fighting against non-benders. Kyoshi warriors who are not benders can more than handle their own against firebenders. They know exactly what to do. Suki's a character who voices a lot of this in the episode. She'll talk about how when you're not a bender, you have to be better than the benders. So that's what we see in this fight sequence. Really beautiful journey between Sokka and Suki, and they're finding commonality and not being benders, and what that means in the world. Blue Spirit, iconic character from the series. We had to figure out how to translate that to live action without going beat for beat exactly what they did, but conveying the important points. In the Blue Spirit sequence here, one of the most important character points is when Aang and the Blue Spirit team up together. They're antagonists, but they have to work together to escape, and that's what we see here. Brilliant series of events to keep you on the edge of your seat. It's one of my favorite sequences. Okay, so nothing too fancy there in the discussion about the Blue Spirit. Let's see here. So Boomy. Okay, we'll get into the Boomy thing. So a few more people coming into the chat here. Welcome. What else do we have here? Yeah, a lot of people concerned about the potential lack of Zhong here, especially if they're doing more with Zhao. That could be quite interesting to see just how it works, because in one of the interviews he did like last week or whatever, or a few days ago, he did say like that, you know, the whole idea of like the idea when he discussed like changing things, like, and the idea that we only make changes when we absolutely have to. And that's always a comment that can backfire on creators when they say it, because inevitably maybe the thing comes out, a lot of fans disagree with certain changes, and then you're kind of like, did you have to make those changes? But we'll see how it happens, of course. We really have not seen enough to make super heavy commentary on a lot of this stuff. Okay, sequence where we see a lot of short clips of fight scenes and bending. So it's interesting that, like, obviously, like, that was the intent with the end of the trailer, is just to showcase lots of bending. Bending was something we thought about long and hard about how we were going to show it. Each of the bending disciplines is different from the other, based on different martial arts styles. Obviously, have different kinds of elements, and we have to show that with the VFX and stunt work. Earthbending is going to move and feel differently than airbending. Okay, yeah, makes sense. May just look like great action sequences, but fans and the scholars of Avatar out there, if you pay attention, you'll notice different martial arts styles that are involved. You'll notice different kinds of VFX that's involved. You'll see the way an Earthbender moves is different to the way an Airbender moves, and we discussed all of that. So, okay, so they're putting the intent in to make this all work. We'll see if that actually delivers, obviously. It was really complicated in a way that I think maybe I even underestimated the first time we got into it. You have your performers, stunt performers, like learning it like a dance. Even if it's a simple move, the way that one move's done is really important, and it helps to differentiate between bending styles. Okay. All the actors who had to perform bending went through very extensive training before they shot their scenes. 6-week boot camp where they learned martial arts and about the different bending techniques, even if it wasn't their own technique. So guest stars who came in, like King Boomy, went through some very intensive training. He will tell you left him sore for days. He was in a lot of ice baths, but it paid off because he became a skilled earthbender, and you'll see that in the performance here. That will be very interesting to see overall how it works. Overall, Team Avatar working together, the boomerang. This sequence shows them actually starting to work together. Okay. It's about the props. Sokka's boomerang, Katara's water skin, Aang's staff. Neville Swain was the prop master, and they tried to get it all right. If Aang's staff is also a glider, how thick should it be? Now that's a weird one, because in my mind, we've seen a few clips of the staff pretty up close. It doesn't look like it springs out into a glider. Where do I have that one? I think it's... Yeah, I think I have it here. Yeah. I'm like, does it open up? Like, you can see like there's a thing here, but like, I'm not quite seeing it, but like rotate it a little bit towards me here. But they're obviously saying that it does spring out, and they I guess they have a version where it works potentially. So that's interesting. And then, yeah, okay, Avatar State, right at the end here. Ultimate Power. We treated it very seriously. In fact, we actually don't see Aang going into the Avatar State as much in our first season as they did in the animated series, because we wanted to make sure that it felt very special. We wanted to make it very clear that Aang could only access that state in a very specific set of circumstances. We tweaked the rules a little bit from the original series as to when and how he can access that state. Okay. There are going to be certain things we modify, going to change, and hopefully fans will see that for the good of the story and in dimensionalizing the story. That's going to be an interesting one to see what they mean by that. Like, the avatar state, the way it, like, works, like, especially in book 1, is like, okay, Aang gets exceptionally emotional, and it happens. Aang comes close to dying, and it happens. Like, defense mechanism, basically through physical danger, and then sort of defense mechanism through kind of like emotional distress. And then, like, obviously at the end, it activates through a powerful spirit, like, helping it activate. What are they talking about necessarily? That's an interesting one. So I'm not sure about this. I want to make it very clear. He'd only access the state in a specific set of circumstances. We tweaked the rules a little bit. I don't know. What do people in the chat think about this one? Because all of a sudden, the whole time through this thing, I'm like, yeah, this is all great. This is all great. This all seems perfectly fine. And then they drop this on us, and it's like, I don't know about that. I'm sure it'll be fine. I'm sure it's maybe pretty subtle. But I'm assuming that he's basically referring to the idea of, like, in 201, it gets explained to us, like, the whole situation with it. And now he's saying it doesn't work like that. The only thing I can think of is they have actors for more of the past lives. So are they kind of saying that, like, he can only access the avatar state when he comes into contact with his other past lives prior to him learning to use the avatar state on his own? That would make sense. That way you can bring the sort of like Kyoshi connection into play. You can have the Roku stuff still happen at the temple. You can still have him do Avatar State stuff in the Northern Water Tribe because of the Karuk connection. Is that what they're talking about? This might be just them being very careful about, like, we don't want to potentially lead new audiences astray in thinking that anytime Aang gets a bit emotional, the lights nearly come on. When even the show, I think, is relatively held back with this, when it is only moments of extreme emotion. That's the only thing I can think of it, just because one of the differences, the really obvious differences that they have here, is that they have an actress for Kyoshi, they have an actor for Karuk, they have a Roku, and I think they know how to use them more because of more recent material from, like, the novels and Escape from the Spirit World, which was a post-Book 2 stuff. Now they have that access to that for doing Book 1. So you can incorporate Karuk into the Northern Water Tribe a lot better than they were maybe able to, just because of what material they had back in Book 1. But even then, like, Ko basically alludes to Umi and Karuk in the finale. So that's an interesting one. So, yeah, the Callum actually asked a good question there. So, which Avatar State moment from Book 1 are they cutting? Because the one that they show here, at the end of the trailer... Let me find the scene here. Here. Seems to very clearly be a air temple moment where they're doing this. So, I'm guessing there is still the initial emotional air temple moment, the tiny, like, the lights flash on for a second moment in the storm. I don't know if people necessarily even view that as being like a full-on Avatar State moment. I'm guessing they're going to cut out, like Octavian Soup says there in the chat, I'm guessing they're going to remove the Aang falls into the water, comes back up in the Avatar State moment, because they probably just are making the decision here. We want it to be for a situation even worse than that. That, in the grand scheme of things, is a pretty kind of maybe not super heavy moment where we need the Avatar State. So rather than just he fell into the water, he came out. They're saving it for the big emotional moment here, the finale, and the big central moment, I'm guessing, on Crescent Island. I'm guessing, just because, like, I suppose in the grand scheme of things, yeah, that moment at the end of episode 2 is cool as a finale to the ending, but is it the best Avatar State moment? Like, it's a good showcase, but I can understand how they might see that potentially as being, like, not required as such, because all this other stuff going on. Do we need the Avatar State here, especially when they're maybe going to do something here as well? Is it too close back to back? I don't know. It's an interesting one, but it's definitely makes you go like, you chose to make changes there, and that's kind of interesting. Yeah, and then, like, yeah, in general, like the storm, yeah, like him kind of, it gets activated there as well to save them from the water. So there's probably once or twice there where it's like they probably don't put Aang into maybe as many situations where the defense mechanism is required to activate, just out of like that sense. So I can maybe see that happening here. So there's that. But yeah, that's the article there. And again, I linked earlier on the chat as well, the video, so I guess you can hear them actually saying this stuff as well. So let me just take a look around here. Is there anything else that's new or different? There's probably going to be a couple of bits and pieces that kind of come out of this as we go forward. And then, yep, that I guess is an interesting point as well. Is there a big thing in relation to the adaptation here? Is there something here that was part of the reason why Mike and Brian left this project? And what exactly are the specifics behind that? Is it related to decision making about what should be in the final product? Or is it maybe as simple as, like, in the background they were like, we're hearing word that Paramount Viacom want to help us make more animations, and they'll fully, properly support us. This is kind of what we wanted to do. Is that part of it? Because the timing is very, like, not sure what the situation is there. But I'm not sure. Will we ever get the story about what exactly happened there? I'm not entirely sure. Let's see. What's this? That's interesting. I'll just bring this over here. So yeah, Brian on Instagram post this. He visited what's this? Is it The Line Animation or Line Animation? Is this anything specifically related to Avatar Studios, or is this just that he is? I'm not sure where this is, but obviously he was in London for Avatar in concert. In 2 days, he's going to be in France for the Paris showing of Avatar in concert. Does this mean anything, or is this just I was near a animation company in a different country, I'm just going to pop in and see what's happening there? But, make of that what you will. That's obviously, Avatar Studios stuff is just so all over the place. I don't really know what the situation is there. because this is where we get into the idea of like, if they don't have an animation studio already for the first, say, like 2-3 products, so the first 2-3 projects, it's like we're never going to see them. So we already know that we have Flying Bark is the main animation studio. We don't know anything about any of the other projects, but we're assuming that Flying Bark is doing it, or they secretly have some other animation studio involved. Like, it's so unclear what the full situation is with Avatar Studios in terms of projects and stuff like that. It's so tricky to just in general just consider what exactly is happening here, because I don't think you can look at that Instagram post and just be like, well, here's the next animation studio for an upcoming Avatar Studios project. I don't think that's what that means. Let's see, off topic, but with the Roku novel delayed to August, do you think we're going to hear about the listings for pre-order later compared to the usual January-February timing? That's interesting. I suppose this is mainly in relation to like when we see the cover is probably the main thing here. So yeah, Reckoning of Roku, yeah, as you can see here, still no cover. Release date remains August 20th, which is pretty much a month delayed from when the books usually come out. I'm assuming it probably means like we'll get the cover maybe a month later than we usually do. A lot depends on what the situation is here. Is that like, is this purely a logistics delay, or is there actually a delay with the cover? Because there is still the potential we get the cover at the normal time. It's just the book happens to be at a very early point delayed. But it's very hard to say ultimately. But yeah, it usually is like what? March, February. Let me check this actually. I can check this easy enough, I believe. Go in here and just type in this. Okay, looking for the wrong thing. Okay, I'll go back through all my Yang Chen videos here. Yang Chen Book 2 revealed with the cover March 28th. So end of March was when they properly revealed the Yang Chen novel. So that could mean potentially it might be like as late April where we find out about the cover. But I'm not really sure what the situation with that is. Will the show come to DVD Blu-ray? I never know what the situation is when it comes to streaming shows, if they are actually going to come out on physical media. Netflix shows, I don't have any information on that. Like, because say like it's been a couple of months now since Netflix One Piece. Has there been any news about that coming out on Blu-ray or anything like that? I'm not sure. I believe with some of the Star Wars shows, on Disney, they've started to release, like, say, The Mandalorian. I think the first 2 seasons came out on Blu-ray. So they're getting a little bit more back into that, kind of realizing that there's still a market there. That's that. So I don't really know what the kind of situation is there. I get the impression Netflix probably doesn't super care about it, but if it's on a different streaming platform, probably more likely. It does make me a little bit worried for like Avatar Studios. Admittedly, it's going to be on like Paramount Plus. The movie, I'm guessing because it's a movie, will come out, but like the first series, like, is that guaranteed to get a release? I'm not entirely sure. I'm assuming they'll judge it based on specific franchises and maybe realize that, like, yeah, we probably should release this, but that's the streaming kind of landscape, is that you never know what the situation is with this sort of stuff. But there's that. But yeah, I think that's pretty much everything we want to say about the trailer. Nickelodeon have been good about DVD releases for their shows. That is an interesting question, actually. I'll just put that down here, actually. Koizilla. I assume they're going to try, at the very least, because this might be changing things just a little bit too much, because I think they're still going to do the whole Zhao Moonslayer thing. It seems like they have a whole extra plot point related to like Karuk's dagger that is the only thing that can kill spirits, and that will still happen. That would still, of course, enrage the other spirit. I'm guessing one of the big Avatar state scenes they might still want to do is potentially the Koizilla scene. Hard to say. Azula Blue Flames. Is that the reason, potentially, why we only saw her with the bow and arrow? Is that they didn't want to showcase Azula's Blue Flames yet and kind of give that away in the trailer? I'm assuming, because they talked in the interview about how like they have different designs for like the different bending, including potentially like sound effects. I'm assuming, of course, the character who has blue fire is also you're going to want to kind of reveal that in the right way, and we'll see how exactly that goes. But there's definitely like key scenes like that where like otherwise, like, what do you do instead of this? You have to do what the last Airbender movie did, basically, because there has to be some giant thing that chases off the Fire Nation. There has to be something that wins the battle, and if you don't do Koizilla and you don't do Aang doing some giant Avatar state wave, then you just kind of have to have Aang go into the Avatar state and like attack ships, which they could do, but I'm assuming part of the whole dynamic and thematic stuff at the end here is that you have the whole spiritual idea. The Fire Nation actually go after the source of spirituality, the source of waterbending, and they get got for it, basically. And that's what the significance of the sort of like bow down to the ocean spirit so you don't get attacked is. So interesting. So there's that. Otherwise, like, I am interested to see like how they do the Roku scene. Like, are they gonna have the whole spirit possession type moment? Because they obviously have to have scenes for Roku's actor to do stuff. That sort of thing. Do they do the full like magma destroying the temple thing? Not really sure. Okay, a question here in chat. My format for discussing the show. This is where it gets tricky, of course, because again we have to have the discussion of just like seems likely that all 8 episodes release at once, as is the usual Netflix style of release. And this obviously is cool because we get it all on the same day, but it is a bit of a disaster in terms of actually wanting to discuss it and break it down in a kind of similar way to what we're doing here with the trailer. Like, we're having this much discussion on like 2 minutes of footage. We're gonna get like 8 hours all in one day, and it's just gonna be like, discuss it. That's the tricky thing for me, and I think it's the tricky thing for a lot of people wanting to watch it, unless you just really love the kind of binge format. I understand it, because I think everyone has specific shows where you're maybe waiting for it to release all at once so you can watch it all at once. There are going to be people who want to do that with Avatar, but of course we're in the Avatar fandom. We want to discuss and take some time with it, so we'd prefer it to be a little slower. I don't need it to be all at once is obviously bad. I wouldn't mind it if they just did big chunks of episodes. I don't need it to be weekly. That's my thing. It's just like, I really do not want it to be, I think weekly, it works. I think weekly is fine. But I think probably the most modern approach in my mind is probably just to group it up into a few chunks. Like, I think maybe for this show, it might be like ideal to be like 2 episodes each every week for a month. Then it's just like, it's the month of Avatar. Like you can market it that way, and you're getting 2 hours of content like each week, and it doesn't take that long to like put it all out there. The reasoning, obviously, from the Netflix side of thing is that they view it as, in the streaming ratings, our show being all out at once and people rushing to binge watch it means we get a number 1 show and it stays there for like the first 2 weeks or whatever, and it's just this crazy initial burst that they assume just like continues the whole way through. They obviously don't necessarily think about sort of fandom building, and this might be where like some of their other issues with other shows come into play, where it's fine because this is like a known global phenomenon, like it says in the trailer. But I'd say for a lot of their other shows which don't have the fandom behind it already, this is where like they don't have too many shows where they maybe build their own fandoms for them, because it is just content to be put out there. And because sometimes like shows get cancelled, and it's like, why did that get cancelled? Well, not enough people watched it, and it's like, let the show kind of grow. Is sort of the whole idea there. So my initial plan in terms of just covering this, like we get to February 22nd, is basically I will put up basically what way is this going to work? Like 2 to 5 maybe, and then like 5 to 8, like 2, 3, 4, 5, 4 episodes. That's quite a lot. You see, this is the kind of problem here. Is it's like I think I want to discuss episode 1 just on its own as like a, hey, finally we have a full episode. That's a way to do it. So I probably have to actually separate this down to like 2 to 4. I don't know. I'll find some way to group it up in the right way, and put out. My hope is over the first like day or two, get these videos out within the first kind of like day or two, just with some like initial thoughts on the stuff that is basically just kind of my opinions. Maybe not going super in depth, because it's going to be a little bit of a rush to try and just get some stuff out there, because everyone's going to be all over the place with regards to where they are watching it. But then the sort of longer plan is more detailed in the like I think that's just ultimately the way I kind of like have to kind of do it, because I just think it's like it's just a mistake for the channel if I just attempt to do some sort of crazy thing where I'm putting out like eight videos over the course of like just a couple of days. I think for the style of content that I want to do for this show and break it down in a good way, it takes time. And then I also want the stuff to be there for people who do want to take a little bit of time to go through it. So I also don't want everything all out like immediately. It's just one of those things where like I think that just has to be the way it goes, because I think everyone is just going to be on the first day or two rushing to just watch everything, because it's just, no one wants to, I think, do the weird thing where you just like abandon the internet for like a week and you go through it as slowly as you want to. You want to be involved in the discussion when it's actually happening. That's why we're here in the hours following the trailer release, because people are hyped today and people are going to be hyped on the 22nd. It's unfortunate though, because the release and how it's likely going to be, we basically know they're going to make it like so that we basically have to try to talk about the finale episode on the first day. So yeah, we're going to do that. And then yeah, like in other discussions that can include like when we're done with this, like overall how was season 2, previews for like how should they do book 2, because I've done a lot of videos where I've given my kind of speculation about how I think book 1 will go, but it's going to be interesting to finally get into the discussion when we see book 1 about how book 2 is going to go, because it's much more plot driven, and how they go about doing stuff like introducing a new main character like Toph, how they do those earlier episodes before the really heavy plot of book 2 kicks into gear towards the middle, and all that sort of stuff. I also have a kind of idea of just like, in terms of like reaction stuff, it's not at all what I want the channel to be, and that's why I typically don't do this. I think I only have like, in the entire history of the channel, there's only been like a handful of things I've ever put up like quote unquote reaction videos to. I probably will do something with this style of stuff for this show, but obviously my approach is that I typically, like, I'm not going to be putting the footage of the show into the video, so it would be basically kind of like a reaction, like commentary track with no footage. So I don't know, it's one of those ones, it's one of those ones where kind of feels like it's a thing I have to do, but also like I don't know how much of an appeal there is to the reaction thing when it doesn't have the footage in it. So I don't know, maybe I might make the reaction stuff like a channel member exclusive video. I'm not exactly sure what way that's all going to work. Oh yeah, the reaction stuff, yeah. I've always just been with my channel in general, like, the idea of putting a picture of me in my thumbnails on like almost any of my videos is just like a bit of a like weird thing for me. Back like in the earlier days of me doing YouTube, of course, like I didn't make thumbnails for the videos at all, so it was just kind of me there. But now that it's sort of like the expected thing, I'm just kind of like, it's a bit weird, isn't it? Just me going like in the thumbnail or something like that. It's just it's not the style of stuff that I want to do, basically, and so on. Like some of the stuff of like titling the videos of like, you won't believe what happened in this thing, and it's like the most mundane piece of information, but that's just kind of me when it comes to these things. Like I think if you've seen some of the stuff, like I think I put up a commentary track like this for the Voltron final episode, you kind of see that like I'm not the most like when it comes to reacting to things, because I typically, when I do want to kind of watch something for the first time, do just kind of sit there in silence and watch it and do the analysis afterwards, rather than trying to like, should I say something now? That sort of thing. Because like for the teaser trailer, for instance, like I went to record myself doing that, but my reaction through the whole thing was just like, oh, this is happening. Oh, this is happening. Oh, this is happening. And I wasn't really reacting to it. I was just like saying what's happening on screen. And I was kind of like, I don't know how interesting that actually is. Let me see. Do I have anything here? Let's see. What is this? Let me just check this. Is this actually my reaction? Yeah, I actually have an example of this. So I actually did record myself reacting to this video here. So let me just get the sound on here so you can hear this. This is why I'm not posting this up, is because like this was my literal reaction to watching the trailer today. Sokka, okay. Fire Nation soldiers, okay. Iroh firebending. Agni Kai making that much clearer for Appa. See, like it's just like that's why I just like towards I think towards the end of that video I'm just like, what am I doing? Like, and I think I just finished the recording before like I'd even finished watching the trailer, just because it was like, I guess this is my reaction, but it's like, it's not much of anything. So that's that. Because it's just that sense of like, oh, I hit record. I have to say stuff. Otherwise, it's literally me just there like... just like minor reactions, because I don't tend to be the person who like freaks out about this stuff. Just like... It's like, Captain America lifted Thor's hammer. But yeah, I might put like one of them out, like just as a bit of a weird thing with the whole episode, just to see what it's like. But we'll see what happens. Oh yeah, that is the question though. Will I freak out when we see Avatar Studios stuff? I'm not sure, because yeah, part of it is definitely that like. I just in general don't have that kind of insane level of hype for the live action, just because it's an adaptation. We're fundamentally talking about like, how will they do these scenes we've already seen before? But like when we get the first trailer of like adult Team Avatar, like I kind of don't really know what my reaction's going to be like, because we haven't got to that level of hype just yet. Like, it was exciting when we got the leaked image, the leaked Avatar Studios image, but because of the way it kind of came out, it was always like, are we allowed to post this? Can I actually post this, and can I talk about it? And I still don't know what the full situation is with that. It's like the illicit image that we're not allowed to talk about, even though it's like, this is why everyone knows the movie is an exciting prospect, is because that image actually leaked out. So I'm assuming like I will be a lot more excited, because it's the full-on future of Avatar. It's going to be, at the time we see the first trailer, like what, 10 years going on 11 since the last time we saw Avatar animation. So there's going to be something overall. That's an interesting one. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. Yes, I probably should just to cover it here. The other piece of news about the concert expanding. Yeah, here it is. Okay. So yeah, Variety came out with this piece. Avatar: The Last Airbender concert series expands to a 100-city world tour. And this is an exclusive that they have, so they confirming that after sold out dates in London, New York, San Francisco, it's going to expand to 100 city world tour. This will begin in September. We'll travel to cities across North America, Europe, and the Asia Pacific region. Over 2-hour concert, and we know all that stuff. Dates and tour details will be announced this spring. So in the coming months, we're going to find out about the remaining dates and stuff like that. So we'll find out like a lot of other, I suppose, parts of America definitely want locations closer to them. I would obviously require them to basically have one in Ireland to actually attend. But it looks positive. That's a major positive thing to see, that they had one actual showing in London. And I'm assuming this is actually more of a response to just how well tickets have sold for the like 10 or so showings overall that they have. But it seems like it's gone down extremely well. This is a huge confidence booster. Like, considering that like the soundtrack has always been this like Nickelodeon don't care situation. It's night and day where we are with this. It's crazy how much more confidence there is in this, that like we're getting the soundtracks and now this is happening. It's just really, really interesting. Otherwise, like there's some comments here from Jeremy Zuckerman and Brian, of course. It's pretty similar to a lot of the stuff he said in previous interviews about it, of just like, it didn't occur to me that the music would be so enduring. It's like, it was enduring. You know it was one of the most liked parts of the show. Come on. It was just that you never had the support until the last few years. That's what actually happened. So yeah, that's that. Brian says, gratifying to see Jeremy Zuckerman's incredible music get the epic treatment we knew it deserved. The fans have shared our passion for this score for nearly 2 decades. And we're so proud to have it brought to life and delivered in such a powerful way. So yeah, that's really all there is here. Like, there's no mention about like the Book 2 soundtrack just yet. Variety do at the end say the first project is the movie focused on Aang, which will hit theaters on October 10th, 2025. It's always unclear when places add this in if that is part of what they were told, quote unquote, to report on, that like, hey, mention this, or if it's just them adding it in because they know that this is a thing that's out there, because they have reported on this previously. How much this actually means with regards to like, oh, that means huge confidence booster for like the dates and no delays will actually happen, hard to say. But it's nice to see it get mentioned, even if we don't know exactly what it's referring to necessarily. But yeah, like, it's the whole point is like, it's an article that literally just came out today that mentions this date. That's a positive. Comes from Variety. It's just like, okay, the October date remains. We'll see what happens. We're still waiting to see what the situation is. I think someone actually also linked me something earlier on, if I remember correctly. Something about Paramount dates. When was this? I think I saw this like this morning. Yeah, this article, also from Variety, actually. Now, keep in mind, I believe there's nothing actually specific about Avatar in this, but in terms of where we potentially could hear about Avatar, Paramount apparently won't be returning to TV's Upfront Week in New York. That just means that I guess they're not going to be doing the big public showcase thing as their Upfront. Instead, I believe that this talks about how, yeah, they intend to start meetings that will be held in New York, Chicago, Los Angeles in late April. And that this is basically why there wasn't one of these last year. They preferred this because clients responded well to it, and this is what they want to do. They're moving away from the super public showcase of this is what we've got. I think we all watched like the investors event when Avatar Studios was announced, and we saw those upfront things of like, they could be a little bit boring. There's a lot of marketing speak before you get to some of those trailers and those announcements, and they're, I guess, keeping it a little bit more behind the scenes. I think news eventually comes out from these, but in terms of like, are we going to see the Avatar stuff announced at a Paramount event? This is maybe just saying that, like, well, maybe not at Paramount up front. But we'll see what else happens here. And yeah, there's always the weird thing, yeah, like TV, we're talking about a movie coming up first, but also Avatar Studios kind of need to announce their first series for quote-unquote TV, but it's a streaming thing, and what does that mean? And it just is really confusing. I really do not understand a lot of the Paramount stuff these days, so it's just a real mess of a situation, and it ultimately just go back to, like, when are we expecting stuff? Comic-Cons, I guess, is probably has to be the best thing to say there. It's just that I still maintain, as long as the October date holds, New York Comic-Con in October this year, that's the 1 year to go, and that kind of feels like are you working with us as a fandom? Are you going to communicate with us? Or is this going to be we're not talking about this until a couple of months to go type situation? I feel we do need to learn some stuff publicly about Avatar Studios, just in the sense of it's not just one project, it's multiple projects. I think there needs to be a bit of a what are we doing here type situation where they actually properly say what the plan is for like the first like stage or wave of Avatar Studios stuff. Because it's just been so long. I think it's just what's expected, that it's not just enough to announce, like, just talk about the movie. We also need to find out about like the other thing, the first series, I guess, and them to announce it. Like, is it going to be the Earth Avatar After Korra series as we expect, or is it something different? Yeah, I think that's mostly everything that I wanted to talk about here. I don't know how much else there is to discuss here. So, how long have we been going? Just under 3 hours. So I suppose final questions time, I guess, for the stream. Is there any other topics that you guys want discussed before I wrap this up? Otherwise, we can prepare ahead for the next stream, which I guess next stream is going to be a bit of a weird one, though, because obviously the Netflix Avatar comes out next month, and I'm pretty sure I'm not going to be able to do a stream just like in the final week of February talking about this, just because it's a lot of content, and I don't know if everyone's going to be done at that time, and I don't know where I'm going to be at in terms of making videos and stuff like that. So I'm guessing if I do a stream next month, it's probably going to have to be before Netflix Avatar comes out. I'm guessing there'll be some final like clips and stuff like that, screenshots. There'll be some final stuff to speculate about on Netflix Avatar, and we'll see what other stuff also happens and comes out as well. Do you think Zhang Zhang is safe? Do you think he's all right? I have no clue what the Zhang Zhang situation is. In any way, like Zhang Zhang's interesting. We're talking about him here in the context of the live action, but what about Zhang Zhang in the context of like the main canon? Like, where is he? When are we going to see Zhang Zhang again? Same goes for basically Boomy and a lot of other characters, but it's like, yeah, I want to see what those characters are actually up to now. So yeah, I didn't know till now that Cabbage Merchant is getting his own kids book. Yep, he's getting his own picture book thing, which should be interesting to see how they do it, because is there enough official content to make an entire book about the Cabbage Merchant? I don't really think so, even though he makes a couple of appearances. So there'll likely have to be some new stuff there. So that is an interesting one to just keep an eye out for whenever they actually like properly announce that. What's the situation with that book? Yeah, for anyone wondering about the context on this, I covered this in a video whenever it was announced a week or two ago or whenever. But yeah, Avatar: The Last Airbender, My Cabbages. It's going to be a picture book, illustrated here, $18.99, coming out in August. And yeah, humorous and playful picture book, all about the cabbage merchant. So 40 pages. How are they going to fill 40 pages with cabbage merchant focused art? Unless they maybe delve into some of the chorus stuff and other content as well. So there's that. Will the creators be at the New York City one? I'll be attending the New York City concert. We don't know. Brian has only said that he's going to be at the Paris show in a couple of days' time. And I'm guessing because there's a bit of a gap then between then and when they finally start the American kind of section of the tour, I assume he'll be at least maybe one of the opening nights in America. I'm not sure if he'll attend the first night of every single performance, but so I'm not really sure what the situation is. It's one of those things where if you're maybe attending the first night in a specific city, maybe that'll be the thing. So there's that. Let's see. When do you think we'll get trivia challenge number 4? Trivia is... I say this every time, and I'm terrible about it, but trivia is just very difficult to do in the way I want to do it. It's really difficult to come up with good questions, and I've said it before, I don't want to do a trivia and everyone gets all the questions right. I really want to avoid that as much as possible when I do those trivia challenges, because I just feel it's an utter failure of the trivia if we do that. The other point is, as mentioned in chat there, I basically will have to bring the Legends RPG into play, which suddenly brings in all like hundreds of pages of like extra content that has all of this stuff, and it just gets really confusing in a way, like even for myself at that point with some of that stuff, in terms of like how much of the RPG do we include, when do we not include specific parts of it. I'm always on occasion thinking about trivia questions, but a lot of the time it's just very difficult to come up with good questions, like I said. That's why there's only been a couple of them, but I think the few that have been out there have been good. But it's just one of those situations where, like, I effectively, to make it so that it's actually a properly difficult quiz, but it's not like silly difficult, I'm having to almost like discover some new lore myself. Like the whole, it's mentioned in chat there, the whole Dantian thing. The reason we finally have that bit of information about like the internal like energy network of the body is that I kind of rediscovered it from like the 3DS version of the game, and like this is what Hundun said in that scene, and now it's up there on the wiki as it mentions it in relation to like chi paths and stuff like that Dantian is a part of it, because I found it, and it was the only way to get a surefire question that basically would actually challenge a lot of people. And even then, like, it was like basically an unfair question, because it's like, hey, I solved this kind of puzzle in the background and then tasked you guys with solving the same puzzle, and it was just a bit of a like thing. But that's just where it is with trivia. It's one of those situations where I'm probably getting to the point where if I want to do another one, I'm probably going to have to ask people to submit questions, but then that gets very confusing about it, and like everyone who sent in a question, of course, would not be allowed to participate in the trivia, and it's just an awkward one. So that's that. So it's just like there's no trivia planned for like any particular time soon, but I try to come up with questions on occasion. It's just very, very difficult. But there's that. And then like I often have ideas of like, what if we do like very different styles of trivia questions, but I don't really know. Yeah, maybe after the Roku novels, there'll be kind of more stuff where we can focus it in on them. But that's just the situation there. And then like with Netflix Avatar coming out, and then potentially Avatar Studios news this year, I'm not really sure if there's necessarily going to be too much time for this, because then I'm almost forgetting as well, Roku content, that's going to happen as well. And that's a lot of videos. And I do wonder, if we're gonna get to a point in like a couple of years' time, if a novel comes out and it's just like absolutely not feasible for me to do the book discussions in the way I usually do them, it'd be cool if like we're getting enough animated content and other stuff that like, we can't do that many of them. But I'd still try and break it down as much as I can, but it probably would have to just be like grouping chapters together, but we'll tackle that when we come to it. A trivia stream with live polls. The limitation there obviously is that they have to be multiple choice questions effectively to do it that way, which obviously makes a lot of the questions, like makes the trivia a little bit kind of like RNG, where like you can just guess and get a good score, but I don't know. That's just, I probably need to stop being so specific about like the exact trivia that I want, but like I said, I do feel if on any of the trivias I've done already, if I went a little bit lower quality with the questions, basically everyone would be getting like 10 out of 10. Just with the way I do them, where I have no problem with like being like, hey, these are the questions, go out, research, read everything you want, because I often feel like I don't think like answering questions on the fly is the greatest test of like if you know anything about Avatar. I think it's more valuable that like, okay, I sort of know this, I know where to find that information, I just don't happen to know it off the top of my head. Like making it so that like it's not just a memory test, and it's actually like Avatar and you know where to get the info from. And that's just the situation there. But yeah, I always try to kind of think of ideas like that, because I would love to do something like that, a live stream where we do a big trivia game. It's just trying to have enough questions, have enough interesting questions to where we can actually like do that in the right way. And it's a lot of there's a lot of just moving parts, I think, to trying to do one of them overall. Like for instance, like say I did, well, I think it was the last trivia where the whole Dantian question came up, or it might have been the one before that. If I just asked that in a live chat, it's like, what have you just asked us? Like people would just be like all over the place. I don't think most people would know where to start overall. But that's that. And then in the style of question I'd want to do, where you can actually research stuff, it's a lot of like basically like, I've asked the question, now leave the stream and find your answers kind of type thing. So I'm not sure how well that works. But yeah, the one thing I'll say about trivia is currently in the question bank, I have one question for the next trivia. Whenever it happens, I have at least one question for that trivia. So I'm like, a tenth of the way there or so whenever I decide to do it. But that's all there is. So yeah, it seems like there's a lot of veterans of the trivia here, and the famous Dantian question. Legacy lore. Yeah, Yang Chen novel lore. It's probably where I would have to source a lot of the questions. If I was to do one in the next couple of months, like before Roku, like it probably would be, I have to get most of it from Yang Chen. Just trying to find the good questions, obviously. Because my thing also with coming up with questions is that I don't want to have like a question that's actually a somewhat complicated question, but then all you have to do is basically like open up the Legends RPG material or open up the book in ebook format and just Control F like a word from the question, and it's right there. So trying to get questions where like you're allowed to do your research, but it's not like right there. It's not just go to the Wikipedia page for the topic and it's there. That's the thing of just trying to make it sort of like not just reliant on memory and not just reliant on basically like make it Google proof in a way, to make it kind of tricky. Can't always do that, but like I want to always have the trivias have at least like a couple of questions that are like I need to think about where to look for this information. Would the Avatar Generations be fair game in the trivia? Yeah, I'd definitely be incorporating the Avatar Generations stuff in. I'd probably be pretty hesitant about using too much of it overall. And that's where it gets very tricky as well, because like say Avatar Generations, because you can't play the game anymore, you can only look up that information if it's on the wiki or by watching playthroughs of it. So like that's also a kind of weird one where like that some of that original Avatar Generations stuff is probably going to become over the years like the most obscure Avatar information out there, because so many people didn't play that game, and then even if they did play the game, are deeply unfamiliar with like the details of the lore and the story stuff. That's the kind of situation here where like, you know, you have to have I think a mix of like decent questions. Like I don't want the whole questions just to be like it says in the chat there, like all this information comes from the Avatar cookbook, which you've probably never read. Or like if you're not super into the RPG, all the questions come from the RPG, or everything comes from the Lost Lore kind of Tumblr archive, which is basically the only way to get that stuff from. I like to include a little bits and pieces of that when I do the trivias, but I like to have like a variety as well, just that sort of stuff, because I was pretty happy with like the trivias that I did before in terms of like a lot of the groupings of questions where there was like a mix of like, hey, here's like an obscure material question. Here's like a weird like name 3 times this specific sequence of events happened. I think like there was like 10 characters who got poisoned or something like that. I think that was one of the questions. I thought that was pretty cool because you can't just like type into like Avatar Wiki poisons or something like that and it all comes up. You do have to kind of go through the material in your head and be like, okay, who got poisoned where and what does it mean to be poisoned? And that stuff like that's a kind of fun question. I think for the first trivia, I think, and it always remains probably one of my favorite Avatar trivia questions, is like, name as many characters as you can who have a last name in Avatar, which is always fun to see like the point at which kind of people trail off on that, and then like where that all happens. But that's just that whole situation. but yeah, like those are things where like if you didn't participate in the trivias, I would definitely recommend that like you check out those videos. I think it's pretty much just 3 trivia challenges, and then there's the 3 trivia challenges results videos. So you can still do the questions yourself if you want to, by just making sure that you watch the question video first and then watch the other one afterwards. Because I think they're pretty good questions. Where like I said, there's a mix of like, that's actually a really fun like scavenger hunt type thing to think about. There's some obscure stuff. Naturally, I think in all of them, there's probably 1 or 2 that have to be a little bit on the kind of easier side that people probably know, but is like a little bit challenging. But just trying to avoid the really obvious ones. Have you played the Avatar movie game? No, I don't really even remember anything about that. But I definitely didn't play the movie game. You never did the winners video for Trivia 3. Yes, I did. There it is. Trivia challenge number 3, answers and results, and I believe the winners are at the end. Or wait, oh sorry. Do you mean the? Oh, sorry. The topic of choice. Yes. That is just it's a long-term thing. The person who won the you get to choose a video of choice has contacted me about it, came up with a few ideas, I responded. I'm just waiting to hear back on the situation there. It's just been like a slow email exchange about like that video, the winner's video actually kind of happening. Just because like if someone does choose a slightly more complicated topic, I kind of want to like workshop it with you so it's actually like a decent video. And then if you do ask for maybe a slightly more complicated topic, I typically kind of am like, hey, I don't know much about this. What were you thinking about in terms of the video? So it's taken a very long time, but it'll happen eventually. I said like there's no time limit on it. It's just, hey, tell me a topic and I'll see if I can do it. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. Sometimes I go through the Avatar Legends lore and I'm like, that's a lot. Do you know like all that lore, and like how much of the Avatar lore do you know off the top of your head? That's the big question. That's the big thing. That's why I always do the trivias as like basically an open book style thing. As like, if I'm asking a complicated question, you can look it up. Watch those episodes, like read the material. Like I have no problem with that. I just like, I don't really see it as an amazing test of like how good of a fan you are, how much you know, that you just happen to remember a lot. Especially when it comes to the really obscure stuff. I happen to remember quite a lot of it just because like I make videos on it, and so I think compared to a lot of people, I'm probably like reading the Lost lore stuff and the RPG more than like your average person who actually owns the RPG book, who will occasionally look at it. And that's why I have a bit of a like, know a little bit of everything. But I still have stuff where I forget like tons of stuff. Like there's so much material in like the RPG and some of these other books. Like I don't remember absolutely everything. It helps that like I do videos on a lot of the main topics. So like if something new came out of a new book, I've probably done a video on it. So the fact that I've talked for like 20 minutes on a subject definitely helps. But otherwise, bit of a interesting one. Let's see. Question: where are we with channel progress? In any increase? Any new channel members? the main thing with the channel is just like I definitely jumped from like, because it was a slow progress, I would say, getting to 10,000 subscribers in terms of waiting for each like 100 to get there until I got here, and then getting from like 10,000 to 10,100 actually happened like really quickly. So that was nice to see, and I'm expecting, I think, as we go into like Netflix Avatar, that things probably will kind of go on from there. And because I notice, like, when I do the news videos and I cover a Netflix Avatar topic, it tends to be of, in general, more interest than a lot of other topics. So I'm expecting that hopefully things will improve in that regard once Netflix Avatar properly starts. Yeah. Okay. Question in chat about the manga. What's this? The manga prequel to the live action. As far as I'm aware, that is a tie-in to the movie. It is movie continuity, completely. Just because of details like Red Spirit, they talk about more details about like Zuko meeting Guru Patik and stuff like that. It's a weird one because like I think there are blatant contradictions compared to like the main continuity compared to what it is, because we know who actually thought Zuko had to use swords, Piandao, not Red Spirit or whatever it is. So I always just associate the whole Zuko story manga as being movie continuity stuff because of when it came out and like what the like intent of it was and stuff like that. But like it's an interesting one. It's actually pretty good. Like if you at all care about the movie continuity, which I know most people don't, there's some interesting stuff in that. But it's probably the most similar situation to probably what we're going to experience when the live action comes out. Is like, how do you deal with this adaptation universe basically having new information that's not present here, and how do you actually like align that together? And in most cases it's like ignore it unless it super fits perfectly. That's the whole idea. Let's see, in terms of channel membership, just like is a kind of slow-ish thing, like where I'll see like it go up by one, kind of like down by one. It's always one where I feel like I probably should mention it more, but I don't want to like overly focus the videos on like, hey, subscribe, channel membership stuff. But it is obviously super helpful for the channel. Which reminds me, I do have to make the exclusive video for this month, which I'm pretty sure is going to be me building this Pokeball puzzle, 3D puzzle, on camera and just chatting about some stuff. And I'll probably get around to that in the next couple of days. Let's see, if you were offered the chance to appear on the Braving the Elements podcast, would you take it? Like, it's probably one of those things, like, if it happened, I'd probably be like, yes, I would. But it's probably one of those situations where I probably would want to be, like, asked, like, a question ahead of time of, like, hey, like, how long do we actually have to discuss things? Can we go in depth on stuff like that? I assume they'd, like, explain a lot of that stuff ahead of times, but, like, if it was going to be sort of like maybe some of the podcasts go, where like it is just a little bit like, we'll briefly touch on this and then this and then this, I'm not sure how much of the focus is. And then I think in general, it probably wouldn't happen, because I'm pretty sure they only get American people on that. Because when they did the weird thing before the podcast, what was it called? The Four Nations Forum? Wasn't that what they did in the YouTube? Where they basically did a kind of fan podcast thing. They only had, pretty sure it was American, or at least North American fans on that. And if I remember correctly, there was like the application thing as well, which is also specified that you had to be um, like that as well. Okay. That was weird. Did the stream die for a second there? Because it seemed to say that my connection went out for a second there. Anyway, not that. We need a video discussing canon after Netflix drops. Yeah, that is probably a separate topic that I will do. Is just like do a video just being like, hey, here are the changes that were made here. Okay. Okay, some slight issues here happening. I think it's just the internet dropping a little bit for a second. So there's that. Yeah, I probably will do a video discussing like, hey, here are the changes that they made for book one, versus like what obviously is done in the original. Here's what works, here's what doesn't. Are there any things we can maybe take from Netflix and actually use as canon in the original and stuff like that? I think that will be probably one of the discussions I want to do. Depends on what happens though. Has anyone found a way to subscribe to and access Braving the Elements Premium without having an Apple device? I haven't looked into it in a while, but when I did the search in and around the podcast release last week, I didn't see it anywhere. I think Apple is the only place that they have the premium thing for, and I don't really see it anywhere else. Because in the press release, obviously, for the announcement of the podcast, it only mentioned Apple. So I have to assume that's the only place it is available. I'm not overly concerned going forward about it because I don't know how many more times there will be like interviews where like them cutting like 10 minutes off to do a bonus will be too like crazy. It was obviously frustrating for the Mike and Brian interview, but like I'm not sure if that matters too much for say like voice actor interviews all that much. Maybe yeah, the FCE podcast when they get to the novels, if they take too much out of that, it will be frustrating. But I assume it will be one of those situations where like that information will get out through the fandom at one point. Couldn't go through a browser. As far as I'm aware, no. Because when you go onto the website on Apple, it just tells you that you have to basically have Apple Podcasts, which has to either be through a device or you have to have an Apple device, basically, I think is the idea with that ultimately. So it does make it sort of exclusive in terms of what happens there. But yeah, nothing of note in episode 2 of the exclusive podcast, which I'm guessing... Yeah, I suppose that is a question. Like, what did they do for the exclusive podcast this time out? Was it extra Giancarlo Volpe interview? Or was there extra discussion on the episode? Because it was... I haven't listened to the podcast that came out earlier on today yet, but I think it's Giancarlo Volpe discussing The Awakening. So we'll see how that goes when I listen to it. Because that should be an interesting one at the very least, because it's a notable creative on the show, on the podcast, not just like a voice actor. So that's that. But yeah, it's a weird thing that they decided to do. I do think making the weird bonus pieces of content, like, I know they put some of it up, like they put I think the discussion on like Zuko Scar, or at least part of it, up on like as like a YouTube short. So they didn't put like the chi field question up anywhere. I wonder why. But we'll see what happens there, I suppose. That's the question. I'd be surprised if there's too many moments like that where it's like, super interesting little detail just like completely hidden behind that. But yeah, we're with that, we're pretty much just waiting to see when they get back around to, probably the FCE interview with Nancy Wu, which could be interesting from multiple angles, depending on how in-depth they go, of course. But yeah, we're just waiting for some stuff. And then, yeah, we're still waiting for the Mako comic to get solicited. Obviously, if you saw one of my videos earlier on in the week, I posted what seems to potentially be like part of maybe the reason why there is some delays. It does seem like there's actually some like art kind of production maybe issues happening on this one. So we'll have to wait and see when that happens, because I pretty much check the solicitations nearly like every day, and I've not yet seen anything about the Mako comic. And I'm pretty sure January solicitations for everything has probably come out at this point. Maybe a chance over the next day or two, but doesn't seem like it's this week anyway. For the Mako comic, which would be a really cool thing to discuss, to have as another discussion topic. And then, yeah, the other things are like, we're expecting a new mobile game at some point this year. Haven't really heard anything else about it since the initial basic press release they sent me. Otherwise, it's just like, whenever it happens. I don't know what the situation is with that. But yeah. And then, Legends RPG, we are expecting some sort of an announcement about that at some point, whatever they're doing next, the Spirit World book, which I'm kind of excited for, if it has as much information as the Republic City book has. So there's stuff, it's just waiting to get there. Thankfully, we are only a month away from Netflix Avatar, so there'll be something soon, but that's that. So, like I said, I've got to wrap it up here. Next stream, like I said, probably will be at some point before Netflix Avatar next month, because I just think it's probably, the timing-wise, not ideal to try and schedule it within the last week of February, when the show has only been out like a week at the time. So we'll see what happens in terms of the topic for, I guess, like a early to mid-February stream next time out. Otherwise, like, obviously I'm covering all the stuff on my channel with the videos, so you'll keep up to date with all the news through that. And maybe if you came onto the stream a little bit late, maybe it's a bit too long to go back through, I will be doing like a video kind of breakdown that's a bit shorter. I'll probably put that out tomorrow. It'll be very similar to what I discussed, so if you've been here the whole time, maybe you don't need to watch it, but I will put up a separate video version of trailer analysis for anyone who maybe wants that. Especially because I did the analysis before I read this interview, so I can incorporate that into the video one. So that will probably be tomorrow's video, assuming it all works out, but yes. So thanks to everyone for coming out to the stream today on this pretty exciting day for Avatar, Netflix Avatar. I think Avatar in general, like that. This was definitely the day Avatar kind of felt like it's coming back. Like, it's going to be, I think, full on hype for the next month, and then it'll be on everyone's minds, I think, once we hit February 22nd. So hopefully things just get more and more interesting for Avatar. But yes, that has been the stream. Thanks for coming out, listening, watching, and bye.